Chapter 32:56. Seeing Jim's sneaky look, Hound 4 felt both angry and amused. "Do you think you can ambush me in the territory of the Golden Triangle with just the sting ants?" Of course he doesn't dare to ambush Master Dog. Jim shook his head. "But he dares to attack me. Master Dog, if the sting ants suddenly attack me, I'm afraid that your 2 men will protect you first and not me. So, they are my bodyguards, of course they will protect me. I will pay for them." Hound 4's tone was somewhat disdainful. "No matter what, you are still a mercenary. Why are you so timid?" Jim was indeed a skilled mercenary, and not one of those stinky fish and shrimps who were just there to make up the numbers. However, there was one thing that made him different from those who had the same strength but had the identity of a Special Forces soldier, and this difference was very big. Although Jim's skills weren't bad at all, his mental fortitude was much worse because he hadn't experienced those perverted mental fortitude training. He wasn't from the Devil's Army, so he wouldn't have experienced those. People who were from the Special Forces and became mercenaries, their psychological endurance was much better than Jim's. This was also the reason why Jim escaped after the Sacred Flame mercenary group was in trouble. Jim did not go through the so-called training to deal with the state of being captured and tortured, so he did not have that kind of super psychological endurance. In the real Special Forces, in order to let the soldiers of the Special Forces have super strong psychological endurance, so that they would have enough willpower to resist the enemy's interrogation once they were captured during a mission, there would be a lot of terrible psychological endurance training. Beating, sleeping through the night and so on, these were the basic routine torture. The suffocation training that tied people's hands and feet directly and hung them upside down, and then buried their heads in the mud. The physical humiliation training that stripped the body naked. The extreme training that tied their hands and feet and sank into the water to find a way to save themselves with their teeth. There were too many of them. There was another reason why Jim was more afraid of death than others. He had a psychological fear of death. This was also left behind because he did not go through professional training. This had nothing to do with a person's strength. The Special Forces who had gone through the training to eliminate the fear of death, even if they were only third-rate experts, were not afraid of death. As for those who had not experienced those things, even if they had reached the Master Realm or the Earth Profound Realm, they would still be afraid of death. When you signed the life or death contract and crawled through all kinds of obstacles in a low-lying position, there would be heavy machine guns firing at you from a height of 1 meter above the ground and obstacles. There would be automatic explosives buried in the crawling area. If you couldn't complete the tactical movement and pass through the obstacles within the stipulated time, you would be in danger of dying. Passing it within the time limit did not mean that they had survived. They still had to continue running across the smooth logs. There were people shooting at the logs from both sides, which meant that if they fell, they would die. If they couldn't pass within the time limit, the log would roll. Do you think you're done just because you're done? No. The training to overcome the fear of death would also make people wear bulletproof vests, neck guards, helmets, masks, and other full sets of bulletproof equipment. Then, a group of people would shoot each other's marked bulletproof vests. Even if they wore protective gear, it didn't mean that they were 100% safe. Everyone knew that. Moreover, even if they were 100% safe, the psychological impact and shock of being hit by a live bullet was something that people who had never experienced before would not be able to understand. Therefore, only people who had experienced these things would have no fear of death. Because they had died too many times, they were already numb to it. Actual combat was even safer than training. This was not an exaggeration at all. Many countries' Special Forces training was even crueler than actual combat. The Special Forces training had a death quota. A certain country's Special Forces had been established for so many years. There was only 1 person who died because of a dangerous mission, but there were 9 who died because of training. These were all real things. Jim, who had not experienced these things, basically had no resistance, so his fear came from his heart. When 4 dogs saw mercenaries with such mentality, he looked down on them from the bottom of his heart. Looking at 4 dog subordinates, they were all retired Special Forces carefully selected from all over the world. Regardless of their strength, at least none of them were afraid of death. The 4 hounds wouldn't appreciate Jim's fear of death. Therefore, even if the 4 hounds found the treasured dog head for him, he wouldn't really put someone who was afraid of death in an important position. There was an eternal truth in the Golden Triangle for thousands of years. In this place, no one who was afraid of death could succeed. But anyone who had achieved great things in the Golden Triangle was not afraid of death. That included Hound 4 himself. Although he hadn't gone through the life or death training of the Special Forces, he was born with a rotten life. The reason he was able to survive to this day was because he wasn't afraid of death. It could only be said that 4-Dog was lucky. How many times had he brushed shoulders with death? How many times had he almost stepped into the Hall of Hell, but he was thrown out by the black and white impermanence? 4-Dog himself said that his life was too tough. Even the King of Hell was not willing to accept him. The more it was like this, the more fearless 4-Dog was. The more he was not afraid of death, the more successful he was, and the more famous he would be in the Golden Triangle. Since the big shot who had the ability to unify the Golden Triangle died, the Golden Triangle was filled with heroes everywhere. It was really not easy for 4-Dog, who was a foreigner, to have today's achievements was really not easy. If the stinging ants really dare to suddenly jump out and ambush you, I promise I will definitely avenge you. 4-Dog suddenly looked at Jim and laughed. At this moment, he really regarded Jim as a little earthworm who was fishing for a big fish. At this moment, Jim also felt like he was hanging on a fish hook. His fate was completely in the hands of others. This was not a good feeling. Seeing Jim's face change, 4-Dog stopped laughing and said perfunctorily, "I was just joking with you. You don't have to take it seriously." Ha. Ha ha. I knew Master Dog was joking with me. Jim no longer trusted 4-Dog. He would not even believe a single punctuation mark of 4-Dog's words. "It's good that you know." 4-Dog continued to walk in front with a swagger. He looked like he was ready to deal with anything that came his way. As they got closer to the parking spot, the stinging ants could clearly hear their footsteps. The stinging ants, who had not experienced this kind of excitement for many years, suddenly fell in love with this feeling. This feeling was really great. Su Yun also became alert. He could already see the place where 4-Dog subordinates were holding the light source. They would be back in about 100 meters. Lin Ge, who was sitting in 4-Dog's car, stretched his body. He had been bored out of his mind for more than 2 hours. Finally, it was time to work. "You guys go back and check out the situation first." 4-Dog ordered the mercenaries behind him. This was his habit. It was also the most important reason why he was able to survive until today. 4-Dog would always ask his subordinates to check out the places where he could be ambushed. This good habit had saved him many times. When the few of them suddenly quickened their pace and came back, Su Yun, who saw everything, immediately became worried. If the sting ants were discovered by the few people who came back early, all of their chances would be gone. The 4 hounds would immediately be on alert and change their route. It was dark and the roads were slippery. Su Yun and the others were not familiar with the Golden Triangle. It was easy for 4-Dog to escape. Therefore, Su Yun was very worried that the two of them would not discover the stinging ants hiding in the bushes. When the stinging ants heard the change in their footsteps, they realized that the situation might be a little strange. However, they had no other way out. They could only hold their breaths and prepare to deal with any possibility. He had to make predictions in advance for any signs of trouble. After waiting for a long time, what welcomed them was an indescribable excitement. The stinging ants had not felt this way for a long time. Su Yun could not help but hold his breath. If there were any changes, he had to change his strategy immediately. This was also the time to test Su Yun's ability to adapt. As the saying went, "Do not move and do not change." It was definitely not something that could be easily controlled. They were all experts at the level of the Special Forces. This foreign legion that could be considered as half a regular army had the same combat nature as mercenaries, so their combat strength was naturally incomparable to the regular army. These fellows who valued money over their lives were definitely not to be trifled with. Although the French Foreign Legion was not a Special Forces legion, each member definitely had the strength of a Special Forces member, and it was not because of luck. It was the strictness of the French Foreign Legion selection of soldiers. The elimination rate of the soldiers selected by the French Foreign Legion was more than 95%. In other words, not even 5 out of 100 people would be selected. This elimination rate was even higher than the United States Marine Corps. The United States Marine Corps was a world-famous special force. Therefore, the strength of the French Foreign Legion should not be underestimated. Their reputation for being brave and good at fighting and giving a high salary was already well known. Every year, tens of thousands of people from all over the world applied to join the French Foreign Legion. But the French Foreign Legion selection requirements were very strict. After a strict selection examination, only a few elites could wear the Foreign Legion's white military cap. The Foreign Legion also had an informal motto called, "Do it yourself," so they had a strong ability to deal with problems. This was probably the reason why Houndhead 4 trusted these 4 people and let them explore the situation. The relevant forces all over the world knew that the members of the French Foreign Legion and the United States Marine Corps often went to the Wild Survival Training Base in French Guiana for special training assessment. The passing rate of the French Foreign Legion soldiers was more than 90%, but most of the United States Marine Corps members couldn't pass the assessment of the Wild Survival Training Base. One could imagine how good the soldiers of the French Foreign Legion were. Su Yun once met a friend of the French Foreign Legion at an international comprehensive military competition. That person was probably 20 years older than Su Yun. Of course, that was before Su Yun officially joined the Dragon Fury team. Because after joining Dragon's Fury, Su Yun would no longer participate in that kind of international competition. At that time, Su Yun remembered very clearly that the big brother of the French Foreign Legion was very strong. He was an Eastern European. This person told Su Yun his story. He was sent to Yugoslavia to perform a mission in 1995. The 4-year-long civil war in Bosnia-Herzegovina was coming to an end, but the Balkan Peninsula was still shrouded in smoke. There were casualties every day. The soldiers of the French Foreign Legion could eat all kinds of expensive seafood and foie gras. After eating, they would receive a suicide note. Their combat power was forced out little by little like this. Su Yun didn't understand why the people of the French Foreign Legion would come to the Golden Triangle to work with the 4 dogs. It was because the Foreign Legion had a lot of money. Although they looked like the French regular army, they were charged to fight, and the price was not cheap. Because their nature was the same as mercenaries. Since they could be mercenaries in France, why would they come to the Golden Triangle, a place where birds don't shit? Obviously, there was only one answer, and that was because the 4 dogs gave them enough money, or even doubled it. Only when the 4 dogs gave them enough money, the people of the French Foreign Legion would come here to make a living. The 4 people were vigilant all the way. When they walked to the hiding place of the stinging ants had completely held their breath. They were really worried that the sound of breathing would alarm the other party. Su Yun was also ready to make a move at any time. If the 4 people really found the existence of the stinging ants, Su Yun needed to kill them before they made a sound. They must not alarm the 4 dogs. This way, they still had a chance to think of a way to catch up with the 4 dogs before they realized something was wrong and catch them off guard. As long as any one of the 4 people made a sound, the 4 dogs would be alarmed. Lin Guo, who was in the car, was also a little confused. He didn't expect the other party to suddenly have 4 people. Should he go out or not? This became a problem. Because Su Yun and the stinging ants didn't make any movements outside, Lin Guo chose to stay put. However, the risk was great. Once the other party noticed that there was something wrong with the car, if Lin Guo was directly blocked in the car, no matter how great Lin Ji's ability was, it would be impossible for him to dodge the bullets of the 4 people in the car. Moreover, if the other party noticed that there was someone in the car, they only needed a bullet to hit the fuel tank, and Lin Guo would be directly blown to ashes in the car. Therefore, the person who was the most nervous at this time was Lin Guo. He originally hid here to give the 4 dogs a surprise, but he didn't expect the 4 dogs to give him a shock, which made him a little helpless. The goddess of luck always liked to inadvertently give a little bit of help. The 4 mercenaries, who were usually very careful at this time, didn't pay attention to the damaged car, nor did they pay attention to the stinging ants behind them. After they came back, the first thing they thought of was to find the dogs, those 4 dead dogs. One had to know that the 4 dead dogs were the 4 dogs' treasures. Although the dogs were already dead, it didn't mean that the 4 dogs didn't care about them. The dead dogs were still the 4 dogs, and this was very important. If the 4 dogs didn't even have their corpses, the 4 dogs would definitely be angrier. Fortunately, the 4 mercenaries quickly found the 4 dead dogs' corpses beside a car. However, the person who stayed behind to take care of the dogs' corpses was nowhere to be found. Soo-yoon held his breath. Any of the 4 people's thoughts could suddenly change the situation. Chapter 32:58. Where is he? The 4 mercenaries found it strange that there was only a dog here. This guy really doesn't know the rules. Doesn't he know that he has to be on standby after he's done? I can't even see his shadow. Could he have gone to look for us? Boss didn't tell him to be on standby after he's done. Maybe. The collapsed area is so big. It's covered with trees and weeds. How can he look for us alone? How can he find us? Even an idiot wouldn't do something like that. Maybe he's sleeping in the car? When the last person spoke, Lin Ji's heart jumped to his throat. These people were talking as they walked and arrived beside Lin Ji's car. As long as someone casually opened the door, Lin Ge would be completely exposed in front of the 4 people. By then, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he had wings. At this moment, Soo-yoon was ready to strike. As long as the 4 of them noticed Lin Ji's presence, Soo-yoon would be able to kill at least 2 of them in a short period of time. What he was betting on now was whether Lin Ge and the sting ant had the same idea as him. As long as they could make the right decision in an instant, and if they didn't choose the same target, they would still have a chance to deal with the problem before the 4 of them spoke. Maybe he's really sleeping in the car. As they spoke, one of them placed his hand on the handle of the car's back seat door. With a light pull, Lin Ge would be exposed. However, at this moment, another person slapped his hand away. How dare you touch anyone's car? This is the boss car. Unless he's crazy and doesn't want to live anymore, he wouldn't sleep in the boss car. The boss hates it when people touch his car. You know that. The person behind him warned, "Watch your hands." I know. The 4 people's careless actions gave Soo-yoon and the others a false alarm. Soo-yoon almost jumped out of the car. Fortunately, he didn't act rashly. The situation at the scene is the same. The 2 of us will wait here. You 2 go back and inform them. The leader of the 4 mercenaries said, "The ground is slippery. Be careful on the road. Today's matter is over. Don't fail miserably. Don't worry. I've walked through so many muddy lands in my life, but I've never stumbled. Don't spout nonsense. The more you say it, the more likely it will come true." Ha 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 ha. The 4 mercenaries had obviously let down their guard. Their mood was much more relaxed than before. Obviously, no one would think that there was still danger lurking around. What was even more unbelievable was that there were enemies in the car just a few meters away from them. Lin Ge patted his chest. Fortunately, the Mercedes-Benz cross-country car had a privacy window. Plus, it was dark, so no one could see anything inside. The 2 mercenaries finally took a break. They took out cigarettes from their pockets and lit them up, enjoying themselves. The 2 mercenaries quickened their pace and used the shortest time to meet up with 4 Dog and the others. They reported the situation briefly. Then, 4 Dog and the others quickened their pace and rushed back. Finally, the stinging ant could clearly hear the conversation between 4 Dog and Jim. He had been waiting for this moment for too long. "Master Dog, I only admire one person in the Golden Triangle now. That person is you." Along the way, Jim didn't stop flattering him. So many local tyrants have innate advantages, but their momentum is far inferior to you, the fierce dragon that crossed the river. Lord Dog, you may become the next person to rule the Golden Triangle in 100 years. 4 Dog snorted. He could naturally hear Jim's flattery. Do you know what kind of society it is now? 4 Dog glanced at Jim. Back then, the Golden Triangle's Big Kuan could rule the Golden Triangle because that era wasn't as advanced as now. Even if there was a war, there was no modern warfare. So, there's a chance. Jim nodded. Yes, yes, yes. Look at the present. You're also a mercenary. It's not like you don't know what modern warfare is, Dog said. Houndfor said, if the whole world really had the determination to completely destroy the Golden Triangle, the old Americans would have used their fighter jets to blow up the F*King Golden Triangle in the name of world peace. Jim didn't say anything. Dog was the one who really understood the Golden Triangle. That's a good reason. If the Americans bombed the Golden Triangle, they could use the excuse that the missile's positioning system had failed to work and throw 2 missiles into Huaxia's territory. It's such a good opportunity. Why didn't the Americans take it? Do you know? Dog said. Jim shook his head. I know that the Americans fought the Taliban because they took over Iraq. It was equivalent to stabbing a knife into Russia's stomach and tying a rope around Huaxia's waist. The Americans fought Iraq because the oil in the Persian Gulf is the lifeline of the world's economy. Stationing troops in Iraq can hold the throat of the world. This is all strategic consideration. Yes, because there are no benefits, Dog said. The Americans know too well who the drugs in the Golden Triangle will go to. The drugs in the Golden Triangle are all Huaxia's people. The Americans couldn't ask for more. Anything that goes to Huaxia is beneficial to the Americans. Now that he thought about it, it was really the case. Now, the drug source in the Golden Triangle could only go north. It was very difficult to go south. If the drug dealers in the Golden Triangle wanted to survive, they had to think of every possible way to get drugs from Huaxia. Dog now had a lot of power in the Golden Triangle, but he had never had the ambition to do more. It wasn't that he didn't have the strength. With Dog's current strength, it could be said that he had the chance to conquer the Golden Triangle. Now that the drug dealers in the Golden Triangle were afraid of him, it wasn't too much to say that. He did have the qualifications. But Dog didn't do so. Naturally, there was a reason for that. The Golden Triangle was full of heroes. The risks that everyone bore were equally shared. Everyone would go through various channels to sell their products. Then, Huaxia would be tired of dealing with them. This could greatly consume Huaxia's anti-drug force. Once Dog really unified the entire Golden Triangle, all the anti-drug forces of Huaxia would target Dog alone. At that time, no matter how strong Dog was, it was impossible to compete with the anti-drug forces of the entire Huaxia by himself. At that time, Dog wouldn't be able to bear the losses. No one would help him share all the pressure. At that time, when he was the only one in the Golden Triangle, the Americans would definitely intervene. Once he was really the only one, his drug source would not be as harmful to Huaxia as there were now so many people. At that time, the Americans would be dissatisfied. They would use this as an excuse to send troops and then completely eliminate Dog. In this way, the Americans would have an excuse to station troops in the Golden Triangle. At that time, it would be more convenient for them to harm Huaxia. Therefore, there were too many things going on here. Many things had their own setup. Go was a smart person. He wouldn't foolishly set up a trap for himself and then put himself in it. He liked the current situation very much. This kind of situation made him enjoy it very much. He would not be fully surrounded by the anti-drug forces of Huaxia. He also didn't have to worry about the Americans coming here to act as the world's police to harm them. He also had a certain prestige in the Golden Triangle. No one dared to provoke him. Dog was very satisfied with all this. It could be said that it was completely enough. Finally, Dog's footsteps stopped when he passed by the stinging ant's hiding spot. This was because he saw the corpses of his 4 beloved dogs on the ground. Although he had obtained the precious dog heads, Dog still felt sad when he saw the corpses of his 4 beloved dogs. These were his most loyal companions. Dog looked around. Everyone here. That's right. Everyone. They would do things for him for money. They would also betray him for money. He was very, very clear about this. Mercenaries didn't have any so-called loyalty. They were only loyal to money. Dogs were different. The 4 dogs that could be loyal to 4 Dog were all dead. He estimated that he still needed some time to digest this matter. Of course, if he found a few more puppies to raise and train from young, he estimated that after 1 or 2 years, he would completely forget about these 4 dogs. After all, 4 Dog would not be loyal to his own dogs. He just enjoyed the feeling of being loyal to a dog. Once there was a substitute, he would naturally forget about it. Chapter 32:59. Even if Master Dog didn't unify the Golden Triangle, Master Dog basically has the final say in the Golden Triangle. The fake smile on Jim's face made him feel bad. He lowered his head silently. Master Dog is the uncrowned king in the Golden Triangle. It's just that Master Dog doesn't care about this title. 4th Dog threw out a sentence coldly. Who said I don't care? I care more than anyone else. In the Golden Triangle, reputation is more important than strength. Jim didn't dare to answer. He just nodded. Sometimes, if this flattery went wrong, the result would be very miserable. If Hua Xia didn't have such a strong anti-drug force, if those anti-drug police were greedy for more money and less responsibility, I would have become the real Asian king of drugs. 4th Dog spat. If that mad dog of the American Empire didn't bite people so easily, I would have unified the other bastards. By then, the whole Golden Triangle would be mine. Who would I be afraid of? I don't dare to be a king because I'm afraid that the damn bastard of the American Empire will act as an international police and make trouble for me. Speaking of this, 4th Dog's mood was still quite unstable. He had been suppressing it all these years. On the surface, many people thought that 4th Dog didn't have such ambition. It was good enough that he could achieve what he had today. Moreover, 4th Dog had always been in this state. But in fact, who didn't have ambition? Not to mention that 4th Dog's power in the Golden Triangle was so big, even those people from small forces would have ambition. A person without ambition was destined to be a mediocre person in this life. Since 4th Dog was very young, he swore that he would never be a mediocre person. If he was a mediocre person in this life, he would be no different from a walking corpse. 4th Dog wanted to leave his name for eternity. But as he slowly grew up, he found that it was simply a fool's dream. There were too many geniuses in this world and too many capable people. It was impossible for a person with his qualifications to leave his name for eternity. Since 4th Dog couldn't do it, 4th Dog would become the mediocre person he despised the most, the walking corpse he looked down on the most. Therefore, 4th Dog decided that since he couldn't leave his name for eternity, he would be a person with a bad reputation. That way, at least he wouldn't be a mediocre person for the rest of his life. Just like that, the 4 dogs walked on a path of no return. They slowly found their direction in life, and struggled bit by bit until today. How could he not want to be a king? Because only by dominating would the stench be able to last for 10,000 years. However, when a person had a certain amount of wealth, a certain status, a certain material and a certain status, he would begin to fear losing everything he had now. It was just like people playing games that charged money for items. The strengthening system that could make weapons more powerful would fail as the level of strengthening increased. Once it failed, it would drop back to its original level. However, once it was strengthened to 10, it would become the highest level of divine artifact, and it would become a revered holy artifact. Before the weapon was upgraded, no one would hesitate to upgrade it when it was upgraded to +1. Even when it was upgraded to +2, +3, or even +4, or even +5, the hesitation wouldn't be too serious. However, when it came to strengthening it to 8 or 9, no one would not hesitate. Failure meant becoming trash. Failure meant losing everything. Right now, 4th Dog was a weapon that had been upgraded to 8. Although he was only 2 upgrades away from the peak, he didn't dare to do so because it was too dangerous. He couldn't afford to take the risk. This was the mentality that a normal person should have. Only a lunatic would not care. However, a lunatic would not be able to achieve what 4th Dog did. 4th Dog was not a lunatic. What do you think the others are talking about me now? 4th Dog suddenly looked at Jim. Jim didn't know how to answer. He awkwardly took a step back and stood right in front of the sting ant's hiding spot. Lord Dog, you are now the king of the Golden Triangle in everyone's eyes. Other than saying this, what else could Jim say? He didn't have any other choice. Bullshit, Fourth Dog said. What you said is just on the surface. On the surface, they are acting like this, but in their hearts, they definitely don't think this way. You are thinking too much, Lord Dog. They definitely wouldn't dare to have other thoughts. Jim shook his head. They are definitely convinced by you. If anyone dares to have other thoughts, I will be the first to destroy them. No one has the right to doubt others. Fourth Dog snorted. He wasn't interested in this kind of cliché flattery. Let me tell you what those people will do. They will think, Fourth Dog is quite powerful, right? But at the end of the day, he's still a cowardly bastard, a coward. Jim swallowed a mouthful of saliva. This guy's mentality was really dark. Do you know why they would think this way? Fourth Dog asked again. Jim shook his head. They wouldn't dare to think this way. Who wouldn't dare? You dare. Fourth Dog said. You dare to say that you didn't have such thoughts? Ha ha ha, I will give you a chance to tell the truth. If I find out that you are lying, I will make you die a horrible death. No, of course I wouldn't dare. I definitely wouldn't dare to think this way. Jim's words were a little incoherent. Fourth Dog shook his head. If you were telling the truth, you wouldn't be so nervous and hesitant. Your words can fool me, but your body language can't fool me. I didn't. Jim was nervous and took a step back again. Su Yun, who was at a higher point, arched his body. Because when Jim stepped down, the stinging ant was completely exposed. Jim stepped on the stinging ant's hand. At that moment, Jim also felt a strong murderous aura. However, the stinging ant didn't give him a chance to escape. The stinging ant suddenly leaped up and slashed open Jim's throat with its bare claw knife. Fresh blood spurted out from Jim's throat and splashed onto Fourth Dog's face. Fourth Dog was stunned. Jim didn't even have the chance to look at the stinging ant before he was killed by it. In order to ensure Jim's complete death, the stinging ant slashed open Jim's chest with its bare claw knife. This bloody scene made the mercenaries feel a little uncomfortable. Their hearts had been dug out. If they didn't feel nauseous after seeing this, then they would be abnormal. The bodyguards behind Fourth Dog immediately escorted him to the car. One of them also attacked the stinging ant without hesitation. Fourth Dog's bodyguard was definitely not an ordinary person. He was quite agile. After 3 consecutive attacks, the stinging ant was barely able to block them. After all, the stinging ant was really tired and had lost a lot of energy. At that moment, Su Yun finally made his move. He was as agile as a hungry leopard pouncing on its prey. He directly jumped down from the sky. Fourth Dog's other bodyguard had no choice but to face Su Yun. However, Su Yun's appearance was too sudden. The bodyguard couldn't react in time and suffered a great loss. In an instant, the entire scene was in chaos. All the mercenaries raised their weapons. However, Fourth Dog's bodyguards were entangled with the 2 bodyguards. They didn't dare to pull the trigger easily. It would be troublesome if they accidentally hurt their own people. Fourth Dog sat in the car with cold sweat on his forehead. The sudden appearance of the stinging ant had really scared him out of his wits. It wasn't that Fourth Dog was a coward. However, after doing so many bad things, a person's courage would indeed become strange. Fourth Dog was very daring when he did bad things. When it came to taking the poison, Fourth Dog was also very daring. However, just now, Fourth Dog was so scared that he was covered in cold sweat. It was as if he couldn't handle the situation at all. At that moment, Fourth Dog was only glad that he had spent money to hire these 2 bodyguards. If it wasn't for these 2 bodyguards, he might really have died in the hands of the stinging ant. Although the situation outside was chaotic, Fourth Dog was confident that everything would turn for the better. He was confident that his people would be able to control everything in the end. Fourth Dog heaved a sigh of relief when he thought about how his life was saved. He felt much better now. Hey, your heart is quite big. You feel better just like that? A stranger's voice suddenly sounded in Fourth Dog's ears. His heart was in his mouth again. Chapter 3260. Lin Gu sat next to Hound C with a smile. The back seat of the Mercedes-Benz was quite spacious, enough for Lin Gu to cross his legs. Your eyesight is really bad. Did you really not see me when you came in? Lin Gu continued to tease him with a smile. Fourth Dog, you're in the wrong here. No matter what, I'm considered a handsome man. How could you not notice it? TSK, TSK, TSK. If you survive this disaster, you'll have to get a pair of reading glasses. Hound C's heart was beating wildly for a while. Just as Lin Gu was provoking him, Hound C planned to find a chance to open the door and escape from the car. But just as his body had the intention to move, Lin Ji's dagger was placed directly on Hound C's neck. Hound C's face was full of confusion. He swallowed his saliva and carefully raised his hands. Brother, let's talk nicely. If we can avoid using the dagger, let's try not to use it, okay? My temper is like this. My temper is not to be trifled with. If there is a disagreement, I will draw the dagger. Lin Gu said, so you better be careful and behave. If you draw the dagger without a disagreement, then we should at least talk. Hound C was a person who had been through a lot. He quickly calmed down. Aren't we talking nicely now? This dagger. Should I? Lin Gu directly patted Hound C's cheek with the flat of the dagger. Okay, don't play with words with me. You are acting like you are very cultured. This is my dagger. I can draw it whenever I want. It is not up to others to point fingers. Understand? Understood. Hound 4 nodded. On the surface, he seemed to be very cooperative with Lin Ge's actions. Little brother, you and I have never met before. We definitely don't have any grudges against each other. Let's talk things over. Lin Gu pouted at Fourth Hound and said, open the box in your arms. Little brother, if you are interested in treasures, then we can definitely work together. Go See smiled. As long as the other party was after money, this matter would be much easier to resolve. How much money do you want? Just name a price. If I can take it out, I'll definitely be happy. Lin Gu frowned. Fourth Dog, are your dog ears not working? Do whatever I tell you to do. Since when is it your turn to make demands? I'm not talking about conditions, Fourth Dog said. I just want to work with you. Cooperate my ass. This time, Lin Gu used the flat of the knife to slap C-Go's face. This slap was very heavy, and C-Go's face was swollen. Hound 4, who had always been arrogant, could only swallow his anger in the face of Lin Ge's public provocation. He sat in the car without saying a word and obediently opened the wooden box in his hand. The dog head lay in the box, safe and sound. When Lin Gu saw the dog head, he let out a sigh of relief. Fourth Dog, you are really a dog fan. You are even obsessed with the animal head. Do you know that this is a national treasure? I was going to give it to the country. Fourth Dog tried to use this method to ease the tension between them. F*CKU. Give it to the country? Then I have to believe it. Can't you speak more truthfully in the future? Lin Gu said, you're better off pissing than panicking. Do you think I'll believe you? Fourth Dog swallowed a mouthful of saliva. But that was my plan. Don't tell me I don't have the right to love my country? Damn. I'm about to vomit from what you just said. Lin Gu was speechless. The fight outside the car was difficult to determine who was winning. Actually, it wasn't that Su Yun didn't have a chance to finish off his opponents. It was just that Su Yun didn't want to do so. He knew that once he and Stinging Ant killed both of them, the mercenaries would shoot at them without hesitation. At this distance, there were so many elite mercenaries. Su Yun didn't want to risk getting injured. Now, they were all waiting for Lin Gu to settle the matter in the car. As long as he settled the matter in the car, everything would be easy. Lin Gu was a playful person. He didn't think too much. He could only let Su Yun tire himself out for a while. Stinging Ant's stamina was already exhausted. If this continued, he would be in danger. Su-yun, you weren't this weak when you fought me. What are you waiting for? If you don't want to be shot into a hornet's nest, hold on for a while longer. Su-yun threw a sentence at Stinging Ant. Stinging Ant was a smart person. He immediately understood what he meant. He lifted a rock with his leg and kicked it at Hound C's car. The car door was hit by the rock. Lin Gu looked outside and shook his head helplessly. What's the rush? This is just the beginning. We're all here to hand over the beast head to the country. Let's not fight like this, okay? Hound C said, if it's a misunderstanding, I'll go out and talk about it. Let's bury the hatchet. How about that? How is it a misunderstanding? Misunderstanding my ass. Lin Gu said, sit down. I'm telling you, there's no misunderstanding at all. Don't even think about taking the beast head for yourself. Where's the other one? Hand it over too. Hound C was stunned. He was confused. What do you mean? This is a dog head. Where am I going to find a second dog head for you? There's only one in the world. Are you playing dumb? Lin Gu slapped Hound C's face again with the flat of his knife. I'm not talking about the dog head. I'm talking about the chicken head. Where's the other beast head? Where is it? There's another one. Hound C almost stood up in shock. At that moment, he really cursed Jim's ancestors in his heart. He thought, this Australian bastard really can't be trusted. After all this time, he only managed to dig out a dog's head, but he still had a card up his sleeve. He actually had another beast's head. This bastard deserved to be killed by the stinging ants. If it was him, he would also kill him, pull out his tendons and skin him alive. Lin Gu saw that Hound C's shocked expression didn't seem to be fake. He quickly figured out the reason. Aya, you're already an adult, but you're still being played? Hound C, everyone says you're smart and powerful. I think you're just an idiot. Hound C took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Since there's a second beast head, you can't kill me. I can bring you to find it. The collapsed area is so small. If you can find it, so can we. Lin Gu said, don't talk like you're so useful. Behave yourself and get out of the car now. Tell your men to throw away their weapons. Otherwise, I won't just beat you up. As he said that, Lin Gu still couldn't hold back and beat Hound C again with the flat of his knife. Hound C's face darkened. If he had the chance, he would definitely pay back Lin Ge's humiliation. The car door slowly opened. Su-yun knew that Lin Gu had already dealt with Hound C. He was ready to end this quickly. The four dogs got out of the car, and Lin Gu followed closely behind. The dagger in Lin Ge's hand had not left the four dogs' necks. Hound C didn't even need to speak. All the mercenaries who saw this scene were stunned. They stopped aiming their weapons. Hound C's two bodyguards were also distracted by this sudden scene. Su-yun, who was ready, knocked his opponent to the ground with a slap. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and couldn't get up anymore. The sting ant seized the opportunity and subdued the opponent, strangling the opponent's neck. At this moment, the sting ant's killing intent was very strong. It obviously wanted to strangle the opponent to death. Only by doing so would it feel comfortable. Throw away your weapons. Hound C ordered as soon as he got out of the car. Obviously, these mercenaries weren't very cooperative. They looked at each other. No one put down their weapons, so no one did it. This was because mercenaries lacked loyalty. They were only loyal to money. They weren't loyal to anyone. If you don't listen, your boss will die. If your boss dies, who are you going to ask for money? Think carefully. We don't want your lives. We want your things, your money. Lin Gu knew these guys very well. He knew what they were loyal to. Hearing this, the mercenaries finally reacted. They carefully placed their weapons on the ground. If the first person did so, there would be a second, and a third. Soon, all the mercenaries placed their weapons on the ground obediently. The threat was reduced by more than 10 times. Chapter 3261. Stinging Ant didn't let go of Hound 4's bodyguard who was choking him to death. Hound 4's scalp went numb as he watched. Without the bodyguard protecting him, Hound 4 was nothing to be afraid of in front of Stinging Ant. Stinging Ant pushed the bodyguard to the ground and kicked him in the waist, sending him to Hound 4. Hound 4 lowered his head and looked at his bodyguard. Even though he was furious, he didn't dare to say a word. He could still feel the cold air on his neck. Hound 4, I'm afraid you didn't even dare to believe that this day would come. Stinging Ant threw a cold sentence at Hound 4. Didn't you say that you wanted to kill me just now? Come on. Hound 4 was a flexible person. He didn't care about his reputation in front of his subordinates at all. I didn't say that. We don't have that much of a grudge. Don't give me that. I'm standing in front of you right now. Do it if you can. Stinging Ant said, Don't pretend with me. I won't fall for it. Stinging Ant, we did have some misunderstandings between us. However, it's been so long. I don't remember it anymore. Are you still so stubborn? Hound 4 said magnanimously, Let bygones be bygones. Let's get to know each other again. Maybe we can even work together. Before Stinging Ant could say anything, Lin Gu couldn't take it anymore. He slapped Hound 4's face with the flat of his knife. All right. Do you really think this is your territory? Hound 4, open your eyes wide and see who's in charge here. Hound 4 was confused. Didn't Stinging Ant come here to mess with him? Did he not have the final say? If the Stinging Ant's words didn't count, then why would the two of them help the Stinging Ant? Hound 4 couldn't understand this. However, Hound 4 felt that this was very beneficial to him. The Stinging Ant's words couldn't be any better. Because other than Stinging Ant, the other two didn't have a reason to kill him, right? In response to Lin Ji's words, the Spiky Ant didn't say a word. This clearly proved the Spiky Ant's position among the three of them. After Hound 4 thought it through, he was energized. He smiled at Lin Gu and said, Brother, since you're the one in charge here, then there's no misunderstanding between us. We're all here to find the national treasure and hand it over to the country. Now, I'll give you the beast head. If you let me go, won't our problem be solved? Lin Gu snorted, You really know how to find excuses for yourself. Don't F*King talk nonsense. At this moment, the Sting Ant's gaze landed on Su Yun. You promised me that you would let me deal with him. Don't tell me you don't remember? Of course I remember. Su Yun nodded. But there's a problem. If you kill him now, I'm afraid these mercenaries won't agree, right? The Sting Ant was stunned. Why? Hound 4 is their sugar daddy. Do you think they'll forgive you easily if you kill their sugar daddy? Su Yun said calmly. A cold light flashed across the Sting Ant's eyes. Since that was the case, he would kill them all. Not a single one of them would be left alive. Didn't you say that these people deserve to die? The Sting Ant looked at Su Yun. Have you forgotten that these people were the ones who sent drugs to Huaxia and caused the destruction of many families in Huaxia? These people are all bastards whose hands are stained with blood. Looks like you're quite good at using people. Su Yun laughed. Then I'll hand him over to you. Hound 4's expression changed when he heard that. He could tell that Su Yun was the leader of the three of them. He immediately expressed his goodwill to Su Yun. Brother, we're all from Huaxia. You don't have to kill us all, right? Let's talk nicely. I'll agree to any of your conditions. Seeing that Su Yun ignored him, Hound 4 emphasized, You can name any conditions you want. Trust me, I'm definitely capable of fulfilling any of your conditions. Shut up. The Sting Ant said, He's already promised me that he'll hand you over to me. Just accept it obediently. We're all living outside. I believe that there's nothing we can't talk about. Sting Ant, you don't have to be so aggressive. Hound 4 seemed to be very confident in himself. He continued to talk to Su Yun. I can give you this dog head. You said that there's another one. I can also ask my men to help you find it. It's all yours. What else do you want? Just name your conditions. To Hound 4, this was definitely the biggest temptation he could give to Su Yun. Su Yun smiled faintly. Name your conditions. Hound 4, you're really the Golden Triangle's Lord Dog. You're really arrogant. Of course. Hound 4 said, I believe that there's nothing in this world that can't be done with money. If there is, then pay more. Brother, I don't care if you're doing it for the item or for the money. I can satisfy you. What reason do you have to reject me then? The sting ant looked at Su Yun nervously. He was worried that Su Yun would waver. If Su Yun dared to agree to Hound 4's conditions, the sting ant would definitely go all out and kill this old bastard. Of course I have a reason, Su Yun said, because I don't only want the animal head and money. I want something else. What? As long as you name it, I'll satisfy you. Hound 4's expression made the sting ant grit his teeth in anger. Su Yun smiled but didn't say anything. Hound 4 suddenly said, Of course, if I satisfy all your conditions, other than letting me go, I also hope that you can agree to one of my conditions. This is an equivalent exchange. It's a good deal. You still have the face to talk about conditions? Lin Gu was speechless. Hound 4's confidence was too big. He actually treated this as a deal. As long as the price I offer is high enough, why can't I talk about conditions? Hound 4 said, Little brother, when you're outside, the more friends you have, the more options you have. It's much smarter to be friends with someone powerful than to work with someone who's down and out. The person Hound 4 was talking about was obviously the sting ant. The sting ant clenched his bare claw knife tightly. The veins on his arms were all bulging. He looked like he was going to skin Hound 4 alive. Then tell me what you want. Su Yun, this old bastard 4 really didn't play by the rules. I really want to know what you want at a time like this. I'm happy to satisfy you as long as your conditions aren't too much. Hound 4 looked at Su Yun with determination. I want you to hand him over to me. No matter what price you offer, as long as you hand him over to me, I'll agree to it. Just tell me how much you want. Is 9 digits enough? The sting ant was about to explode when he heard that. This bastard still wanted to kill him at a time like this. Just as the sting ant was about to kill Hound 4, Su Yun stopped him. The mercenaries were still there. Although they didn't have any weapons, once Hound 4 died, they would panic in order to protect themselves. At that time, if they accidentally damaged the head of the beast, it wouldn't be worth it. 9 digits. F*CK, you're really generous. Lin Gu looked at Hound 4 in shock. You're rich. You're willing to spend hundreds of millions just to buy a life? How much are you worth? Brother, if you can put this dagger on my neck now, I guarantee that in 2 hours, your bank account will have more money than you can spend in a lifetime. Fourth Dog's rich and overbearing tone was really asking for a beating. However, he didn't think so. He believed that there was no problem in this world that couldn't be solved with money. Lin Gu thought for a while and shook his head. Why would I need so much money? I can't bring it with me when I'm born, and I can't bring it with me when I'm dead. Have you heard of this saying? It's the saddest thing to die without spending all your money. That's still better than spending all your money without dying, Hound 4 said. Brother, think about it. The money I give you is enough for you to buy a villa in any rich city in the world. You can live in luxury cars, beautiful women, cigars, and champagne for the rest of your life. It's really tempting. Lin Gu nodded. Hound 4 sneered in his heart. He knew that there was no one in this world who didn't love money. There was no problem that money couldn't solve. However, Lin Gu still didn't put the dagger away. Unfortunately, I don't like cigars or champagne. As for luxury cars, I'm not that interested. I've even flown a plane before. Chapter 3262. Seago didn't believe it because he had never met anyone who wasn't tempted in his life. Now, Lin Gu directly rejected all of his conditions. Don't you want to have countless women? Seago continued to tempt. As long as you have money, you can get any woman you want. This is the reality in any city in the world. Money can't solve the problem. Can you stop bragging? Lin Gu said, if you really had money to that extent, you would have cleaned up long ago. Why would you be living a life of bloodshed here? Si Go was stunned. Lin Ji's words obviously hit his weak spot. Although drugs were very profitable, Si Go sold them at wholesale prices. It was still relatively cheap for him to get a supply. At most, he would arrange for people to go to the border and sell them at the price of a second-hand dealer. As for the price of a gram in Yanjing, he had never sold it because it was too dangerous. That was because it was too dangerous. Although there weren't many benefits to wholesale, it was safe. Even so, Si Go could still make a lot of money every year. However, Si Go's expenses were also high. In the Golden Triangle, there were too many people he needed to support. Just in the poppy garden, there were hundreds of people working for him. He solved a considerable part of the employment problem for the locals. The wages of these people were just a small matter for Si Go. More than half of Si Go's money was spent on mercenaries every year. Only with great strength could one ensure one's power. This was an unspoken rule in the Golden Triangle that everyone knew. Therefore, although Si Go seemed to be rich, he didn't have much left after deducting his expenses every year. He only had a few billion in his hands at most. To be honest, compared to Su Yun, Si Go's net worth was really poor. Sky Entertainment Group's annual net profit was more than $1 billion. Now that the movie industry was so developed, a good movie could earn more than $1 billion at the box office. It was too easy to make money. To put it bluntly, Su Yun's annual income was probably more than Si Go's lifetime income. I can give you hundreds of millions of money. Isn't that enough for you to live a carefree life? Si Go said. Lin Gu snorted and said to Su Yun, brother, listening to his tone, he really thinks of us as beggars. Are we still going to cooperate with him? I'm already being very sincere. For Go glared. How many top mercenaries could he find with 100 million? The number of people in the Golden Triangle who could afford 100 million was definitely less than 5 fingers. Fourth dog, I'm afraid you haven't been back to Huaxia for many years, Su Yun said calmly. You don't know much about the prices in Huaxia, do you? Hound 4 was stunned. What do you mean? Do you know how much the luxurious courtyard houses in Beijing cost per square meter? Su Yun. 500,000 per square meter. According to the area of the courtyard houses, which are thousands of square meters, this house will cost more than 500 to 600 million. Do you really think 100 million is money? Fogo's eyes widened and he was speechless. On the other hand, the mercenaries were all dumbfounded. In some of their countries, 500,000 could buy a villa that was thousands of square meters. In Beijing, Huaxia, it was only 1 square meter? The difference was too horrifying. Do we have to live in Beijing? Fogo said, 100 million is enough for you to buy a house in the wealthy district of the United States. With the remaining money, you can easily buy a Ferrari Enzo, right? Stop joking. Su Yun. Enzo isn't something you can buy just because you want to. Besides, do you really think Enzo is the most expensive sports car? Ha ha ha. Audi Pikes Peak sells for more than 200 million. Lamborghini Hermes sells for more than 300 million. Rolls-Royce Silver Charm sells for more than 1.5 billion. And an Arabian Nouveau Riche builds a pure gold sports car for nearly 3 billion. Other cars only have gas mileage per 100 kilometers, but not only does this car have gas mileage, it also consumes 50 grams of gold. Fogo was stunned. Fogo, do you really think that you, a drug dealer in the Golden Triangle, can really cause a storm in the world with just a bit of money in your hands? Su Yun. It seems that in this place where traffic is blocked and information is underdeveloped, it's easy for people to be ignorant and narrow-minded. To be honest, Fogo had been in the Golden Triangle for so many years, but he really didn't pay much attention to the development of the outside world. He couldn't believe that there was a house that cost 500,000 per square meter in Beijing. He also couldn't believe that a few years ago in Huaxia, the house price in a third-tier city had already exceeded 10,000. He couldn't believe that Huaxia had developed so quickly. Hearing Su Yun's words, Fogo finally realized why so many third-tier and even fourth-tier dealers, liked to do business in Beijing. He also understood why his goods could be sold for 2,000 to 3,000 per gram in Beijing. There were more and more rich people, and money was becoming less and less valuable in his eyes. In big cities like Beijing and Shenzhen, a property that easily cost 100 million was no longer a rare thing. It wasn't difficult for those rare properties in prime locations to be sold at such a sky-high price. In Huaxia, where there were more and more nouveau riche, Forgo's net worth of $1 billion was nothing. You plan to use this little bit of money to talk about cooperation with me? You want me to hand people over to you? Su Yun smiled slightly. Unfortunately, I really don't care about this little bit of money. Su Yun wasn't flaunting his wealth, but he really didn't care about Forgo, who relied on crime to make a fortune, being so arrogant. Forgo acted as if he was the richest person in the world. Even if Su Yun didn't have money, he didn't care about people like him. Moreover, Forgo's net worth was nothing in front of Su Yun. Hearing this, the sting ant finally felt relieved. Fortunately, the only thing that the 4 hounds could bring out was money. If you don't care about money, then what do you want? Tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you. Forgo panicked. Su Yun really thought about it seriously. The stinging ant frowned. He won't give you what you want. Why are we still talking nonsense with him? Just hand him over to me. I'm afraid he really can't give me what I want. Su Yun looked like he had given up. Forgo shouted, I can give it to you. There's nothing I can't give you. You can't even afford a courtyard house in Yanjing City. What else can you give me? Lin Gu was also impatient. Don't be so persistent. I want everything you have. Can you afford it? Su Yun suddenly said, Everything you have in the Golden Triangle belongs to me. Do you dare to give it to me? Forgo was stunned. Su Yun not only wanted to cut down his tree, but he also wanted to dig out his roots. Stop joking. Everything in the Golden Triangle isn't something you can handle. Forgo said, But if you want shares, I can give them to you. I can share my profits with you every year. You'll have an endless source of wealth for the rest of your life. Aya, it's a pity that you can't do this for the rest of your life, Su Yun said. Forgo said seriously, Others can't do it for the rest of their lives, but I, Forgo, can do it for the rest of my life because I know how to do it. I'm not like those guys who become arrogant after a little success. I know when to keep a low profile and when to be cautious. I believe that, Su Yun said. Otherwise, the anti-narcotics police at the border wouldn't have suffered so much from you. I have my own way of making money and surviving. You can rest assured about that, Forgo said. It's a pity that you're unlucky to have met me. Su Yun waved his hand and said to the stinging ant, I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with him. Send these mercenaries away, and I'll leave him to you. A rare smile finally appeared on the stinging ant's face. You all know who I am. You won't get any benefits if you fight with us now, the stinging ant said to the mercenaries around him. The sting ant said to the mercenaries around him. He was well aware of the loyalty of the mercenaries, especially the loyalty of the mercenaries in the Golden Triangle region. It was almost zero. The stinging ant continued, If you leave now, you can still get a share of the things in Forgo's house. If you go back late, I'm afraid you won't even get the things. I'm afraid you can't count on him to give you money. Do you want to be safe and change your master, or do you want to gamble with your life here? It's your choice. The stinging ant's words were very clear. He had no intention of letting Forgo leave alive. Chapter 3263. A smart person would be able to imagine the loyalty of a mercenary even if they didn't know much about it. Needless to say, Stinging Ant knew a lot about mercenaries. In the eyes of a regular army, mercenaries were definitely a derogatory term. An army formed by desperados who valued money more than their lives did not deserve to be called an army in the eyes of a regular army. Hua Xiao's ancestors had a lot of wise sayings, such as how there would always be fish under delicious bait, and how there would always be brave men under great rewards. This was a vivid description of mercenaries. Although these mercenaries were not necessarily a mob and were all from the regular army, their image and reputation were not good. It was all because of their lack of loyalty. Hegel said, "Their existence is reasonable." From this point of view, mercenaries were completely a product of commerce, which was also in line with the original intention of employment. Mercenaries only believed in money and did not have a sense of country or nationality. A team that only relied on money to maintain was not reliable. As a mercenary, Stinging Ant was most worried about fighting against Hua Xia's soldiers for a reason. This could actually be compared to mercenaries. Hua Xia's army was called the Hua Xia People's Liberation Army. They were loyal to Hua Xia and the people of Hua Xia. On the other hand, mercenaries like Stinging Ant were motivated by money. Only those who worked for money were mercenaries. When a real war came, the loyalty of these two would definitely be different, and the choice would also be different. Hua Xia's soldiers paid a price for Hua Xia's stability, but mercenaries paid a price for their masters. In fact, a truth was proven during the 30 Years' War in Germany. The combat power of a country's citizen army was much higher than that of a mercenary army without a stance. Combat power was not just a matter of ability, but also a considerable part of it was mental power. Of course, from the looks of it, mercenaries had a lot of room to survive because some things had changed. For example, the Romans in the Punic War always thought that their army was definitely stronger than that of a mercenary army without a stance, so their citizen army won against Carthage. Not long after, in the Battle of Jugurtha, the performance of the citizen army was a complete mess. In the end, they had to replace the citizen army system with a mercenary system. More than 200 years ago, the Americans also believed in a citizen army. In the end, during the Anglo-American War, the English army, which mainly consisted of mercenaries, burned down the earliest White House. In his memoirs, Lincoln also said that when a group of extremists surrounded the building he was in, the army had already scattered, and it was the mercenaries who confronted them for more than 48 hours that allowed him to survive. Therefore, after the Vietnam War, the United States changed from a compulsory military service system to a mercenary one. This was hard to say. The so-called loyalty sometimes depended on whether the nation was truly united or not. It also depended on whether the country's leader was willing to lead. It was undeniable that most of the mercenaries worked for money. They were not easily intimidated and did not develop fear easily. This way, their morale would not be so easily affected. Although all mercenaries were motivated by money, not all mercenaries were easily bribed. For example, most of the people in the Holy Flame mercenary group were role models. Although they did not understand loyalty, they understood honor. Mercenaries who understood honor were very difficult to bribe. However, it was undeniable that there were definitely many ruffians among the mercenaries. As the mercenaries became more and more professional, as professional soldiers, their psychological quality and combat skills were very strong. Many countries hired mercenary companies in large numbers. Sometimes, when mercenaries fought bravely and were not afraid of death, they would rather die than surrender. It seemed to give people a feeling that they were very loyal. However, the Holy Ants knew that this kind of loyalty was only superficial. It was a so-called loyalty that had a deeper reason. Why would mercenaries rather die in battle than surrender? Was it because their loyalty was high? Was it because their stance was firm? This was all nonsense. The most fundamental reason why mercenaries would rather die than surrender in war was because mercenaries were not protected by the Geneva Convention. Think about the mercenaries in the French Foreign Legion. They did not even wear helmets in battle. They were not afraid of death, they were afraid of being captured. Look at what the Geneva Convention said about the protection of regular army prisoners of war. At the beginning, it emphasized that the detaining country had to be responsible for the prisoners of war. The prisoners of war must be treated and protected humanely at all times. They must not be subjected to physical mutilation or any medical or scientific experiments. They must not be subjected to violence, intimidation, humiliation, or harassment by the public. Revenge measures against the prisoners of war are also prohibited. Even the prisoners of war, other than weapons, military equipment, and military documents, must be kept by the prisoners of war themselves. Moreover, the prisoners of war must be provided with accommodation, food, hygiene, and medical care. They must not be ordered to do dangerous and humiliating work. They must not be subjected to physical or mental torture. After the war ends, the prisoners of war must be immediately released or repatriated. There must be no delay. Look at the Geneva Convention's protection of regular army prisoners of war. It was too comprehensive. If the Geneva Convention also protected mercenaries, they would definitely not fight so desperately in the war. It was because the Geneva Convention did not protect them. Once they were captured, they would be tortured. Those things that couldn't be done to the prisoners of war of the regular army would all be done to them. Many people did not know the cruelty of war. Ordinary people could not imagine the horror of war. Not to mention those who were not protected by the Geneva Convention. Even prisoners of war who were protected by the Geneva Convention would have to endure torture that would not easily leave behind any evidence. Once a mercenary was captured, they would basically be tortured to death. Therefore, they would rather die loyally in the war than be captured by the enemy. The thorn ants said this to the mercenaries in front of them because they knew this mentality. As long as they did not make things difficult for the mercenaries, did not take their lives, and did not capture them. Instead, they would let them go and give them a chance to gain benefits. They would not be so stupid as to fight with their lives on the line. The thorn ants' words silenced all the mercenaries. Some of them were still looking at the weapons on the ground. Some of them had already calmed down. Their killing intent slowly disappeared. You can't betray me. Don't forget, I paid you. Every one of you can get millions of dollars in commission every year. Now that I need you, you are betraying me. Hound 4 said heartbreakingly. He could not accept the fact that his mercenaries were retreating. However, it did not matter what Hound 4 said now. These mercenaries were very clear about their situation. It was not impossible for them to risk their lives to save Hound 4. However, the chances of that happening were not more than 50%, or even less. Because they were forced to disarm themselves just now. Even if they could save Hound 4, they knew very well how many of them would die based on the skills of Su Yun and the Thorn Ant. It would be good if 2 out of 10 of them could survive. Who could guarantee that they would be the remaining 2? Therefore, they were very worried about this. Now that the sting ants were telling them to leave, Fourth Go was dead for sure. If that was the case, they could really raid Fourth Go's house and take away everything valuable before looking for the next house. Anyway, the bosses in the Golden Triangle were lacking mercenaries. The more powerful the bosses were, the more they lacked professional mercenaries like them. They were not worried that they would not be able to find a job after leaving Hound 4. This was one of the main reasons why they were not loyal. After all, their loyalty was only on the surface. The only thing they were loyal to was money. As long as they had money, they could change their master at any time. If Su Yun took out $10 million and threw it at these mercenaries, they might even raise their guns and aim at Hound 4. This was not strange at all. It was very normal. Betrayal was a very normal thing for mercenaries. Chapter 32-64. Finally, the first mercenary took off his jacket and threw it on the ground. Boss, if there's a chance in the future, let's work together again. When the first mercenary turned around and left, the others also made their decisions. Some took off their jackets, some ripped off their sleeves, and all of them threw away whatever they were wearing before bidding farewell to Seago. You bunch of ungrateful dogs. Seago's eyes were red. He really didn't expect that he would be betrayed by everyone. Even the bodyguard that he hired with a high salary, who was heavily injured by Su Yun, slowly stood up and bowed to Seago before turning around and leaving. How much money do IF King give you every year? You're leaving just like them. Seago roared at the top of his lungs. Even if you die, you have to ensure my safety. Do you have any professional ethics? However, no matter what Seago said, no one cared about him anymore. Everyone left in a short period of time. Lin Gu then threw Seago out. Seago stumbled and fell in front of the stinging ant. The stinging ant's cold aura made Seago feel an inexplicable sense of fear. People who had experienced great storms and waves were usually fearless in the face of danger. However, being fearless in the face of danger was because he had the capital to do so. It was because he had the confidence to deal with everything. When Seago realized that he didn't have the capital to deal with everything, he would also be afraid. When he encountered problems and troubles that he couldn't solve, what else could he use to be fearless in the face of danger? Facing the threat of death and losing the capital to deal with it, no one could be arrogant anymore. Lin Ge brought the dog's head to Su Yun. Su Yun took it out from the box and looked at it carefully. He only felt relieved when he saw that the treasure was intact. Since they could find the dog's head, they weren't far from the chicken's head. It was only a matter of time. Now, they just needed to find the place where Seago's men dug, and they could easily find the other beast's head. While Su Yun was looking at the dog's head, Seago tried his best to calm his breathing. The sting ant looked down at him without saying a word. When the fourth hound finally calmed down, the sting ant suddenly kicked the fourth hound in the stomach. Hound 4 howled and lay down on the muddy ground again. Although the pain was excruciating, Hound 4's face revealed a trace of a smile. He already couldn't remember when was the last time he was in such a sorry state. However, this feeling was so familiar. As a person who struggled to make a living at the bottom of society, he had suffered countless humiliation to reach this point. Therefore, it wasn't that Hound 4 wasn't familiar with this feeling of humiliation. It just hadn't experienced it for a long time, so it suddenly felt a little unfamiliar. How can you still laugh at a time like this? The stinging ant looked at the 4 hounds mockingly. Fourth hound clutched his abdomen as he endured the pain and straightened his back. You should enjoy your life to the fullest. Don't let your gold bottle face the moon with nothing. If I'm going to die tonight, why shouldn't I die with a smile? It's good that you know you're going to die tonight. A cold light flashed across the sting ant's face. I won't let you die so easily. Sting ant, do you hate me that much? Think about it carefully. I didn't do anything to you, right? Fourth hound said, you don't have to hate me so much, right? You didn't do anything to me because you didn't have the chance. If you had the chance, do you think you would let me go? The sting ant said, Fourth hound, the entire Golden Triangle knows that you're the one who wants to kill me the most. Why would I want to kill you? Fourth hound said, why don't you think about why I want to kill you? If you didn't destroy more than 3,000 kilograms of goods back then, do you think I would kill you? Do you know what 3,000 kilograms of goods meant to me back then? It was all I had. Because of you, I almost couldn't turn over a new leaf in this life. Although the one who wanted me dead wasn't you, and the one who was arranged to kill me wasn't you. But the biggest setback in my life was caused by you. What does this have to do with me? The sting ant said, that's because you're incompetent. If you had the ability, you wouldn't have fallen to this state back then. Fourth hound sneered, I'm incompetent? When that old bastard's butler made him a cuckold, and his wife and son teamed up to kill him, where was your ability? Didn't you claim that you could guarantee his life of wealth and safety? The sting ant was silent. If it wasn't for that incident back then, he might have really stayed in the Golden Triangle. He wouldn't have gone to the Middle East to make a living, and he wouldn't have been involved in the matter of the beast head in Huaxia. His Sacred Flame mercenary group might not have disappeared. I found the chance to stand up again at that time. Fourth hound said, how can I not hate you? You can hate me, but it's a pity that your luck isn't good enough. You didn't have the chance to kill me. After the sting ant finished speaking, the bear claw knife in his hand was already on Fourth hound's neck. If it wasn't for you, I might not have become who I am now. Sometimes, I really should thank you. You're the one who forced me to become the best version of myself. You're welcome. Fourth hound closed his eyes. What would come sooner or later. Since begging was useless, since surrendering was useless, why would he seek that kind of humiliation? He might as well provoke the sting ant to give him a quick death. That way, he wouldn't have to suffer. Do you have anything else to say? The sting ant said, when I could really kill you with my own hands, I realized that it's quite boring. If you die, I'll have a lot less pressure. Do you know that? Pressure is actually a disguised form of motivation for me. Fourth hound laughed out loud. Things have already come to this point. Do you still have to be so pretentious? I'm not being pretentious. The sting ant said seriously, I really should thank you. Since you're going to die, and I've already done what I wanted to do, how about this? I'll give you a chance. Do you have any last wishes? If I can help you, I'll do it for you. You should think about yourself. Fourth hound sneered. You still want to help me fulfill my last wishes? You should think about your own wishes as soon as possible. This provocation made the sting ant angry. The bear claw knife in his hand had already cut Fourth hound's skin. When Hound 4 felt the pain of his neck being torn open, he yelled, Do it. Come on. Kill me. Kill me and you'll be set free. Ha ha ha, sting ant. In fact, you are a coward, a total softy. Shut up. The sting ant's bear claw knife ruthlessly pierced into Fourth hound's shoulders. The small and sharp dagger directly tore Fourth hound's deltoid muscle. Fourth hound's screams seemed to resound throughout the entire golden triangle. The ruptured ligaments in his shoulder joints caused Fourth hound's shoulders to collapse. When he fell to the ground, he couldn't support himself with his hands and directly fell to the ground. This fall completely stunned him. His face and nose were on the ground, his teeth were broken, and his tongue was torn. Blood flowed non-stop. Chapter 32:65. Hound 4 struggled to turn over, but the ant stepped on him and pinned him to the ground. If you're a man, give me a quick death. Hound 4 panted and endured the pain. You can't be considered a man if you play like this. Don't you usually like to torture people? The ant sneered. Why? Are you afraid now that it's your turn? Hound 4, this isn't your style. Since you like to torture people so much, you should enjoy the feeling of being tortured. Otherwise, you'll have lived your life in vain. Hound 4 bared his teeth and said, Sting ant, why do you have to be so cruel? I'm already a dying man, why do you have to be so merciless? Why didn't you know this before? The ant's smile was very strange. Everything is fated. Hound 4, have you forgotten what happened 10 years ago today? It's today. I've already forgotten about this date, but I didn't expect it to be so coincidental. Go-See was startled. How could he know what day it was today? To him, if he wanted to celebrate a Memorial Day, then every day was a Memorial Day. For so many years, he had done something worth remembering every day of every month. Why are you still talking nonsense with him? Lin Gu said. He's going to die anyway. What's the point of torturing him? For the first time, the ant refuted Lin Gu so firmly. Of course it's meaningful. You haven't experienced it, so you naturally don't know what it means. If you were me, you wouldn't let him go so easily either. Letting him die so quickly is a form of relief for him. It's not a punishment at all. Lin Gu was really stunned by the ant's roar. This guy didn't dare to refute him all the way. Su Yun could tell that the suppressed anger in the sting ant's heart had suddenly erupted. Just now, the ant remembered what happened 10 years ago today. It was the last day when he lost his position and was forced to leave after the internal strife in his master's family. Then, he was chased by Hound 4 in the Golden Triangle. Lin Gu still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Su Yun. Since the sting ant didn't lie to them and they had arrived at the place where the head was hidden, it wouldn't be too much to give him a few minutes. Lin Gu nodded and watched quietly. His vigilance towards the sting ants had been raised again. After all, the 4 hounds were no longer a threat. You really can't remember? Let me remind you. Suddenly, the sting ant bent down and used its bare claw knife to slash the 4th dog's ear. With a hiss, it slit the dog's chin. The unbearable pain caused the 4 hounds to roar and roll around. However, the sting ant's feet were firmly planted on the sting ant's body, preventing the 4 hounds from moving an inch. The blood on his face flowed down his entire neck. Veins popped out on Hound 4's forehead. This was the most painful thing he had ever endured in his life. Do you remember now? The stinging ant's expression became somewhat ferocious. The scene from 10 years ago finally surfaced in Hound 4's blank mind. It was the day when the 4 hounds forced the sting ant to a dead end. The stinging ant had gained a foothold in the Golden Triangle because of his righteousness. Many people liked to look for him and work as mercenaries under him. They would listen to his arrangements and commands. The stinging ant would strive for the greatest benefits for all his mercenary brothers. When something happened, the sting ant didn't abandon his mercenaries. The 4 hounds wanted to kill them all. After the sting ant pointed out a path to his mercenaries, he purposely left an opening to lure the 4 hounds and his pursuers to another path. Because of this, the sting ant saved more than 20 of his men. However, in order to attract the attention of the 4 hounds, he fell into their encirclement and got injured. The injured sting ant had no choice but to jump into the Mekong River to get rid of his pursuers. In the end, he fainted in the river due to exhaustion. The sting ant was quite resilient. He lost a lot of blood and his body was soaked in the river. Even though he fainted in the river, he didn't choke to death. In the end, by chance, it was brought home by a local mother and daughter who lived next to the Mekong River. The mother and daughter applied medicine on the stinging ant to stop its bleeding and took care of it for an entire day before it regained consciousness. At that time, the stinging ant was very touched. He even swore that when he became successful, he would pay for the mother and daughter to move to the most prosperous city in Myanmar. He would buy them a big villa and hire servants. That was the vow the sting ant made to the mother and daughter that he didn't know. Of course, he only said that in his heart. He didn't show it in front of the mother and daughter. Even though he didn't say anything and looked like he was in dire straits, the mother and daughter who didn't live a rich life still took care of him meticulously. They even killed the only hen that laid eggs in their house and made soup for the sting ant to nourish his body. Seeing the mother and daughter's weak bodies, the sting ant, who had blood on his hands, was so touched that his eyes turned red. Perhaps that was the first bit of kindness in the human heart. No one was born a devil. Kindness would always move anyone, even a devil like the sting ant who killed without batting an eyelid. Although the sting ant's spirit had recovered, his body was still severely injured. He couldn't walk anymore. However, Hound Head 4's men had already searched along the river and found the items and blood that Hound Head 4 dropped on the riverbank. Hound Head 4 and his men confirmed that the sting ant was hiding nearby and started a large-scale search. The mother and daughter hid the sting ant. The sting ant's leg was severely injured and he couldn't fight against Hound Head 4's men. Hound Head 4's men searched every inch of the area and found the only house near the riverbank. In the house, Hound Head 4 found bloodstains. Hound Head 4 was very sure that the mother and daughter knew where the sting ant was. However, the mother and daughter insisted that they didn't know anything. Hound Head 4 was furious and shot the mother to death. Then, he cruelly hung the mother's body in front of the daughter. The daughter couldn't face the reality and her mind was on the verge of breaking down. However, Hound Head 4 didn't let her go. He ordered his men to release their primitive desires on the girl. The girl was tortured by them until she became a lunatic. Even so, as if having 4 dogs wasn't enough, the psychopath actually got someone to skin the girl. The sting ant was hidden and didn't know what happened. However, he stayed in the hiding place for an entire day and didn't see the mother and daughter. Only then did he realize that something might have happened. When the sting ant returned, Hound Head 4 had already left with his men. The tragic scene of the mother and daughter was deeply imprinted in the sting ant's mind. It was at that time that the sting ant developed a fear of Hound Head 4. He had an inexplicable fear of this perverted bastard. The sting ant wanted to take revenge. However, he couldn't accept the scene in front of him. In the end, he chose to give up and ran away. He left for 10 years. In these 10 years, he didn't dare to think about the scene that happened beside the Mekong River. It was a demon in his heart that he didn't dare to face in his life. Because of this demon, the sting ant didn't even dare to come to the Golden Triangle to seek revenge on Hound Head 4. If he had a choice, he wouldn't have brought the beast head to the Golden Triangle to hide. He found a psychiatrist and forced himself to forget about the incident through selective amnesia. However, The moment he saw Hound head for, everything came rushing back to his mind. Moreover, the tragedy happened 10 years ago on the same day. How could the sting ant forget about it? Chapter 3266. You can't possibly have forgotten what happened back then. Stinging Ant said to Fourth Dog with a trembling voice, "They were innocent, but you tortured them to such a state." Thinking about this, Hound 4 fell silent. If the stinging ant didn't mention it, he would have already forgotten about his evil deeds. After all, he had done too many bad things in his life. This kind of killing and torturing was a kind of pleasure for Hound 4. It was a pleasure that filled him with passion for life. Faced with the angry stinging ant, Fourth Dog was not ready to admit his fault even though he recalled it. "I was incompetent at managing and didn't stop my subordinates. That's why they did those things." "You're still trying to deny it? Do you think I don't know what kind of character you have?" Stinging Ant spat. "The whole Golden Triangle knows that you're a pervert. The whole Golden Triangle knows about your disgusting hobbies, and you're still trying to deny it? If it wasn't your order, could it be that they did it themselves?" "They did it of their own accord, it wasn't my order," Hound 4 argued. "Although I am responsible for this, it's not my responsibility. Those people back then all died or were crippled for various reasons. There are punishments for them." Stinging Ant raised his knife and cut off Fourth Dog's ear suddenly. This sudden slash caused the 4 dogs' screams to resound through the collapsed area once again. The last few brave birds were startled and fled away from this wretched place that was filled with screams again and again. Those punishments were bestowed upon them by Allah. "Today, I will personally punish you. I will return everything that you owe them, every bit of it." "Are you crazy?" Fourth Dog roared hysterically. "I didn't do all of this alone. What do you want to do to me?" At this moment, Fourth Dog's eyes were really filled with fear. Fourth Dog might not be afraid of death, but he was definitely afraid of torturing people. As a pervert who liked to torture people, he was most afraid of such things deep in his heart. It was also because of his own fear that he liked to use such methods to deal with others. Hound 4 rarely gave a satisfying death when he killed someone. The reason was simple. He felt that killing someone was meaningless. Only torture could make a person feel more fearful than death. "I will let you experience what you did to them back then." The stinging ant's eyes were bloodshot. "You used a knife to cut every inch of her mother's skin. You used a knife to peel off every inch of her flesh. You hung their broken bodies under the scorching sun. You turned their bodies into a feast for mosquitoes and ants. Every bit of pain you made them endure, I will use it on you. I will let you know what kind of pain you endured under such cruelty." Su-yun fell silent when he heard the sting ant's words. The cruelty of the Fourth Dog was not a secret in the Golden Triangle. However, Su-yun didn't expect the sting ants to be so cruel to civilians and ordinary people. If it was said that they had a reason to be cruel to their competitors and enemies, for the sake of benefits, for the sake of deterrence, they had a reason to forcefully justify their actions. However, if he would do such a thing to ordinary people, then he would really be powerless to defend himself. No one would listen to Fourth Dog's explanation. No matter what, he shouldn't do such a cruel thing to ordinary people, even if he was a drug lord and the mercenaries under him were all cruel people. However, the most basic human nature still had to be followed. If they didn't even have the most basic human nature, then they didn't deserve to be human. People who would kill and torture other living creatures didn't deserve to be human. Even animals wouldn't do such things. No matter how cruel an animal was, it would only hunt for survival and kill for survival. It would never do such bloody and cruel things for fun. The things that Fourth Dog did could be said to be worse than animals. Hound 4 probably knew this very well. Even a cruel and merciless person like him would have nightmares, and every time he was woken up by a nightmare, it was because of the people he had killed. The sting ant's bare claw knife struck again. This time, he destroyed Fourth Dog's nose. That pitiful scene was truly unbearable to look at. Fourth Dog struggled like a madman. He wanted the sting ants to give him a quick death, not torture him to death like this. "I beg of you, give me a quick death." Fourth dog screamed hysterically. He begged Su Yun and Lin Guo for help. Lin Guo saw that Su Yun didn't have any reaction, so he turned his head away. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. This scene was too painful for his eyes. Lin Guo really couldn't stand it. Su Yun should have intervened in this matter. After all, what the sting ant was doing was too cruel. If it wasn't in front of him, he might not have done anything. However, it was happening right in front of him. His principles made Su Yun feel that he had to intervene to prevent this from happening. However, in the end, Su Yun didn't stick to his principles. Every time he wanted to stop or give fourth dog a quick death, he would see the sting ant's bloodshot eyes. Perhaps the sting ant didn't have any feelings for anyone in its life. However, it definitely had feelings for the mother and daughter who sacrificed their lives to save it. Perhaps the mother and daughter were the only people in the world who could make the sting ant feel like a family. No one would be able to tolerate a bastard who tortured and killed their own family members, right? Those who didn't have family members might not be able to understand, but anyone who had family members would understand this pain. To a certain extent, this mother and daughter pair could be compared to the sting ant's mother and wife. How could it tolerate the sting ant's mother and wife being killed by fourth dog? What could Su Yun do to stop them? If it was Su Yun might have done the same thing as the sting ant. Although Su Yun was a person with principles, under certain special circumstances, his principles couldn't control him. It was the same reason why he was expelled from the Dragon Brigade. When something completely agitated Su Yun wouldn't care about anything else. Back then, Su Yun wanted to kill that bastard who betrayed the country for his own benefits. It was because his brother's death was related to that bastard's betrayal. Therefore, even when that bastard confessed and the relevant authorities were prepared to give him the punishment he deserved, Su Yun didn't follow his principles and killed that bastard with his own hands regardless of the consequences. Back then, he was willing to bet his entire life's glory on it. It was all for the sake of the fairness in his heart. This was because Su Yun knew very well that the bastard's status was quite high. Even if the relevant departments would give him the harshest punishment, he would still be imprisoned for life. And for someone of his status, he would be imprisoned for life in a comfortable place and would not be thrown into an ordinary prison. Although this kind of imprisonment was the most terrifying punishment for someone of his status, Su Yun didn't think it was enough. Su Yun didn't think it was a punishment. Instead, the relevant authorities were helping him escape. This was something that Su Yun couldn't tolerate. Therefore, Su Yun chose to do it himself. Only his death could calm Su Yun's emotions. This kind of person must receive the most extreme punishment. Take Fourth Hound for example. Death wasn't a punishment for him. Instead, it was a release for him. If he died, he wouldn't receive any punishment. He would only be released. How could the sting ant's hatred be appeased? If that was the case, the sting ant naturally wouldn't be appeased. That wouldn't be a punishment for him at all. He obviously couldn't accept it. What he wanted was for Hound 4 to receive the punishment it deserved. He wanted Hound 4 to suffer, not to be freed. Su Yun took out a cigarette and lit it. He slowly sat on the hood of a car. Perhaps there were always such conflicts and struggles in this world. Sometimes, it was difficult to make a choice. Therefore, it was better not to make a choice and just pretend that nothing happened. Chapter 3267. The sting ant's anger had reached an uncontrollable level. Hound 4's death proved that he would have to pay for what he had done sooner or later. The method that Hound C used to think was cruel was used on him by the stinging ant. Hound C almost went crazy. The stinging ant almost crushed all the bones in his body, starting from every joint of his fingers, all the way to his ribs. The sting ant also left hundreds and thousands of wounds on Hound 4's body. Every cut was neither deep nor shallow. Hound 4 didn't die, but he could still feel the most painful external injuries. Every time sting ant stabbed the 4 hounds, it would tell them why it was stabbed. It remembered clearly the countless wounds on the mother and daughter's body. From that day onwards, sting ant suffered from trypophobia. It did not dare to look at anything that was too close to it. It was because of the countless wounds on the mother and daughter's body. That was the most horrifying scene the sting ant had ever seen in his life. Hound 4's cries had gone from hysterical to barely breathing. Even he didn't know how much longer he could hold on. The sting ant's bare claws were like a torrential rain. Some of the wounds didn't even have time to make him feel the pain before new wounds were added. This kind of revenge was unbearable for anyone. It was the most painful feeling to be unable to die. The sting ant wanted the 4 hounds to experience the pain of being unable to beg for death. Back then, the 4 hounds had tortured the innocent mother and daughter to death. Although the sting ant had never experienced this kind of pain, he could imagine it. He could imagine every second before the mother and daughter took their last breaths. They must have wished for him to die with every second. They didn't want to live for even a second longer. What kind of pain did they have to go through to have such thoughts? At this moment, Hound 4 must have felt the pain clearly. He didn't even have the strength to beg for mercy. Pain coursed through every inch of his body. The continuous pain caused him to have a mental breakdown. At the last moment when Hound 4 was on the verge of death, the sting ant's claws slowly landed on Hound 4's neck. A smile finally appeared on Hound 4's face. He swore that this was the happiest he had ever felt in his life. Although his entire body was exhausted, although his pain was unbearable, at this moment, death was his greatest wish. As long as he could die, he would do anything. One could only imagine what the sting ants had done to him. Now, even Su Yun couldn't bear to turn his head and look. He could imagine the bloody scene. Just the smell of blood was enough to make people feel disgusted. "Do you want to die?" The sting ant sneered, "Fourth dog, you're thinking too much. Ha ha ha, the great golden triangle lord dog is actually lying at my feet today, hoping that I'll kill you and give you a quick death. Ha ha, how is this possible? This isn't Lord Dog's style at all." Hound 4 didn't even have the strength to tremble. The unbearable pain was tormenting him. "I won't give you a quick death," the sting ant said. "All the wounds on your body have avoided the main arteries. I'll let you bleed bit by bit and let you die bit by bit. You can at least slowly enjoy it for 2 hours. In these 2 hours, you'll repeatedly lose consciousness. However, I guarantee that every time you regain consciousness, you'll be in more pain than the last time. You'll only die when you lose consciousness. You'll very, very confidently savor and enjoy every second of waiting for death. This is what you deserve. This is what you owe them." Hound 4's eyes were already dyed red by his own blood. At this moment, it was as if he couldn't see anything clearly. All he could see was the color of blood, the boundless color of blood. At this moment, he suddenly realized that the feeling of not being able to even beg for death was the most despairing thing in the world. How many people would clamor that they couldn't even beg for death when they encountered a small setback? If he were to lie here and experience the pain that Hound 4 was enduring while waiting for death, he might not feel anything in the future. You're going to keep looking at me. Wait for me to die." Hound 4 used up all his strength to stutter this sentence. The sting ant stared at Hound 4 without blinking. "Don't tell me you're still hoping that someone will come and save you? Hey, even if someone does come and save you, do you think you'll have a chance to live?" Hound 4 didn't need the sting ant to remind him. He had already lost his will to live. The wounds that the sting ant made on him were all wounds that were difficult to heal. Even if he was immediately carried to the operating table, the chances of him surviving were very slim. Moreover, this was the Golden Triangle. Hound 4 only needed 2 hours to die from the blood loss and pain. 2 hours. It was simply impossible to find a hospital in the Golden Triangle. If someone were to save him, they could only guarantee that Hound 4 would arrive at his territory and his home within 2 hours. That was already the limit. Therefore, Hound 4 knew very well that he had no chance of surviving. "I know. I'm dead for sure. Ha. Ha ha. But I want to say, even if I die, the pain that the mother and daughter suffered will never disappear." Hound 4 was already in a daze. The sting ant's expression turned cold again. Even if they die, their bodies will remember everyone who violated them. Remember every second of pain. Ha 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 ha. Hound 4 continued to laugh. You can't change. You can't change that fact. Hound 4's laughter was like a sharp knife that ruthlessly stabbed into the sting ant's heart. The most painful thing for the sting ant was to think about the pain that the mother and daughter had gone through. This would probably become an obstacle that he would never be able to cross in his life. However, the sting ant had no other way to make Hound 4 suffer anymore. Hound 4 had already endured the pain that a human could endure. At this moment, the sting ant actually felt a sense of defeat. This was exactly what Hound 4 wanted to see. At the end of the day, even though Hound 4 knew when to yield and when to stand tall, he was definitely a character that could be considered as an owl. When he still had a chance to live, he could beg for mercy and humiliate others. However, when he lost all hope, he still chose to face death calmly. Although death would come quickly, and although death would make him feel helpless, he was not afraid. Even though Hound 4's mind was in a mess and he was spouting nonsense, he still wanted to prevent the sting ant from obtaining its final satisfaction. Because the sting ant did not give him a quick death, even if he was tortured to death, he would not let the sting ant feel satisfied. At this moment, Hound 4 won in the end. The sting ant was very upset. He was upset that he did not enjoy the thrill of revenge. Hound 4 still weighed heavily on his heart. However, he could not do anything to Hound 4 anymore. This was the cruelest punishment he could give Hound 4. However, nothing could change what happened in the past. He could never make that pain disappear. Soo-yoon felt that it was about time. He turned around and extinguished the cigarette in his hand. That's enough. Hatred can never be completely removed. Indeed, hatred can never be removed. Forever. The sting ant suddenly raised his head and howled. After he finished howling, he picked up a huge rock beside him and smashed it on Hound 4's head. Padash! It was like a watermelon falling from a high altitude. Watermelon juice splattered everywhere. However, this time, it was Hound 4's head that was splattered with juice instead of a watermelon. Hound 4 finally turned into Hound 4 just like his evil dog. Everything that happened in the collapsed ground was over. However, it seemed like it was not over yet. At least, it was not over for Soo-yoon. The chicken head was not found yet. They still had to stay in this gloomy and terrifying collapsed ground. They had to be wary of the holes under their feet and carefully search for the chicken head's whereabouts. The sting ant slowly stood up. It was so relaxed that it looked like it was about to fall asleep. Once, the king went hunting on the prairie in high spirits. His entourage brought dozens of hunting dogs with him, and it was a grand sight. It was definitely more impressive than the 4 dogs in the Golden Triangle. Soo-yoon said, the king's body was very well maintained. His muscles and bones were strong, and his skin was glowing. He looked like a king of a country. When the entourage saw the king riding on a horse, majestically chasing a leopard, they could not help but praise the king's bravery. The leopard ran for its life, and the king chased after it. When the leopard slowed down, the king calmly drew his bow and aimed at the leopard. With a whoosh, the sharp arrow flew across the prairie like lightning in the blink of an eye and drilled into the leopard's neck. The leopard hissed and fell to the ground. Lin-gu pursed his lips. If it were him, he would not have bothered to chase it. He would have directly shot the arrow. Good technique. The king was very happy after killing the leopard. He saw the leopard lying on the ground for a long time without moving, so he lost his guard. Before the entourage could catch up, he dismounted from his horse to inspect the leopard. Who would have thought that the leopard was waiting for this moment and used its last strength to suddenly jump up and pounce on the king? Damn, even leopards know how to play tricks? Soo-yoon glanced at Lin-gu and did not know whether to laugh or cry. This child was treating the story as reality. At the time, the king was also stunned. When he saw the leopard open its bloody mouth and bite, he subconsciously dodged, thinking that it was over. Fortunately, the entourage caught up in time and immediately shot the leopard's throat. However, the king's little finger was bitten off by the leopard, and it bled profusely. When the Prime Minister heard about this, he persuaded the king that losing a small piece of flesh was better than losing a life. Think about it, everything was arranged for the best. Lin Gu said, "Wasn't the bastard throwing himself at the muzzle of a gun?" Yes, the king, who was already in a bad mood, was furious. The Prime Minister realized that the king was very angry, but he did not care and continued to emphasize that this was the best arrangement. In a fit of anger, the king threw the Prime Minister into prison. The Prime Minister also firmly believed that this was the best arrangement for him. Is there something wrong with the Prime Minister's brain? Is this still the best arrangement? This almost killed him. Lin Gu was speechless. At the time, the king was also furious. He thought the same as you, that the Prime Minister's brain was damaged. In a fit of anger, he ordered the Prime Minister to be locked up. After a month or so, the king recovered from his injuries and planned to go on a private tour with the Prime Minister like before. However, when he remembered that he was the one who had thrown the Prime Minister into prison, he could not bring himself to release the Prime Minister, so he went on a solo tour. As he walked, he came to a remote mountain forest. Suddenly, a group of barbarians with red paint on their faces rushed down from the mountain. They quickly tied him up and brought him back to the mountain. Lin Gu was startled. "Brother, I feel like I've transmigrated." "Listen carefully to the story," Su Yun said. Lin Gu quickly shut his mouth. At this time, the king remembered that today was the full moon. Every full moon, a primitive tribe would come down the mountain to search for sacrifices to the goddess of the full moon. He sighed. This time, it was really hopeless. He wanted to tell the barbarians that he was the king and if they let him go, he would reward them with a mountain of gold. However, his mouth was gagged and he couldn't even speak. When he saw himself being brought to a large furnace that was taller than him and the firewood was burning, his face turned pale. The high priest appeared and stripped the king naked in front of everyone, revealing his delicate dragon body. The high priest clicked his tongue in wonder. He didn't expect to find such a perfect sacrifice. The goddess of the full moon is the symbol of perfection. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the sacrifice is ugly, dark, or short, as long as there can't be any flaws. When Su Yun said this, Lin Gu suddenly understood. The stinging ant couldn't help but say, "Wasn't the king?" "Don't interrupt my brother's story." Lin Gu glared at the stinging ant. Although he didn't follow the rules, he had to make others follow them. At this time, the high priest discovered that the king's left pinky was missing half of his left hand. He had no choice but to chase the king away and find another one. Su Yun continued. The freed king was ecstatic. He rushed back to the palace and immediately called for the Prime Minister to be released. He set up a banquet in the royal garden to celebrate his life and the Prime Minister's freedom. At this time, the king must have believed that everything was the best arrangement. If he hadn't been bitten by the leopard, he would have died today. As a bystander, Lin Gu listened with great interest. Although the king thought that everything was the best arrangement, he also felt that it was a waste for the Prime Minister to be locked up in prison for a month for no reason. The king's orders weren't the best arrangement for the Prime Minister. Lin Gu nodded. That's right. That's why this matter isn't so comprehensive. Some are suitable and some aren't. No, it was the best arrangement for the Prime Minister. Su Yun nodded. If the Prime Minister wasn't in prison, then the person who accompanied the king on his private tour would definitely be the Prime Minister. When the high priest found that the king wasn't suitable to be sacrificed to the goddess of the full moon, then who would be used as the sacrifice? If it wasn't the Prime Minister, who else would it be? Wow! Lin Gu exclaimed. The king saved the Prime Minister's life in disguise. Everything was indeed the best arrangement. Su Yun glanced at the stinging ant. Everything that happened in the Golden Triangle was the best arrangement for the stinging ant. This was something that only he could deeply understand. Chapter 3269. Well said. Everything is the best arrangement. This is indeed the best arrangement for me. Sting Ant smiled. His smile was so relieved. After so many years, he could finally let go of the pain that he had suppressed in his heart that he had never dared to mention. Lin Gu said, "Since this is the best arrangement for you, it's time for us to experience what the best arrangement is. Let's go and find the beast head. Once we find the beast head, this matter will be completely over." Okay. Sting Ant was now duty-bound to fulfill Su Yun and Lin Ji's request. Just now, Su Yun and Lin Gu understood and accommodated him, so he gave Four Dog the punishment he deserved. Now, he sincerely cooperated with the two of them. It was indeed something he should do. However, just as the three of them were about to leave, an ominous premonition suddenly surged in their hearts. The roar of the car engine in the distance and the violent vibration from the ground made Su Yun realize what had happened in an instant. The 10 mercenaries who had left before had returned again, and this time, there were more than 10 of them. It was needless to say that the Four Dogs had great power in the Golden Triangle, but to what extent was his power? To be precise, he had hundreds of acres of poppy fields, which provided at least hundreds of jobs on the assembly line for the local residents in the Golden Triangle. In addition, Four Dog had a mercenary team of nearly 200 people. All of them had been tested by him. There were no lowly hooligans who came to make a living. Four Dog had said a long time ago that he would rather spend millions of dollars to hire someone who could fight 10 people at once than to hire those hooligans who had no real combat experience at such a cheap price. Therefore, Four Dog's mercenary strength could be regarded as the strongest in the Golden Triangle. Of course, it was useless now. Even though he had the strongest mercenary strength, he would still die miserably when it was time for him to die. In fact, Four Dog's death today was entirely due to his arrogance. At first, when he heard that they were looking for treasure, Four Dog ordered more than 200 mercenaries under his command to move out. However, halfway through the journey, Hound 4 stopped. Seeing that it was getting harder and harder to move forward, and that the more people there were, the easier it would be to slow down, Hound 4 simply ordered most of the mercenaries under him to stop, and he chose these people himself. Now that the Four Dogs were in trouble, they all escaped. In the process of escaping, the 4 mercenaries from the French Foreign Mercenary Group suddenly attacked the others and directly killed them. After that, they immediately notified their friends in the mercenary group. Among the mercenaries under the 4th Dog, nearly 100 of them had jumped ship from foreign mercenary groups, and they were all top-notch experts. The reason was that the 4th Dog had paid a lot of money. Now that something had happened to the 4th Dog, they had lost their employer. Moreover, they heard that there was a priceless treasure. Naturally, they spontaneously formed an interest group. The foreign mercenaries who stayed behind suddenly killed the other mercenaries who were not on their side. Everything happened so suddenly that no one realized that their comrade would suddenly kill them, so they didn't waste any time. After killing the other mercenaries, these foreign mercenaries immediately drove to the place where the incident happened. Just now, the stinging ants had wasted 40 to 50 minutes on the 4th Dog, and at this time, these mercenaries just happened to rush over. These people relied on their numbers and their weapons and equipment to charge over without any concealment. These bastards are really tired of living. Lin Gu spat. "Brother, we can't bear this, right?" "Of course we can't bear it." Su Yun said faintly, "Here are the weapons that they just abandoned. Bring them all with you. We will enter the collapsed area first and try to find the beast head as soon as possible while playing guerrilla warfare with them." Now the ambush was definitely useless. Just now, Su Yun had jumped down from above. If he still hid in the tree at this time, as long as the other party raised their guns and shot blindly, it would make them suffer a great loss. Therefore, Su Yun didn't consider ambushing them at all. Moreover, the beast head also needed to be protected. They had to enter the collapsed area as soon as possible. That way they would be more protected. This time, including Stinging Ant, he could also choose the weapons he liked. The weapons on the ground were enough for the 3 of them. The fully automatic assault rifle HVK-30, which had an extremely fast firing speed, and the fully automatic submachine gun ARC-7, which had a slightly higher recoil but had a similarly fast firing speed, were more popular. Both Lin Gu and Sting Ant had their eyes on them. Although the man-o-war was very powerful, it had a slow firing speed, so they didn't seem to be particularly interested in it. Because they were very confident in their shooting accuracy, they would choose the faster guns. Similarly, the XR-2 and M8A7 didn't seem to be their cup of tea. The fully automatic submachine gun Kuda, which had a stable firing rate and a stable recoil, was a weapon that everyone liked to carry around. The Razorback, which had the best shooting accuracy and the title of the king of mid-range shooting, was also snatched by Lin Gu. There was also the MR6 semi-automatic pistol, the RK5 triple rapid-fire pistol, and the CAR-9, which had a decent firing speed, were also good choices for handguns. In short, the three of them divided up the weapons of the 10 people. There wasn't a single magazine left. After all, they didn't know how many people the other party had. However, just by listening to the sound of the car engine, they should have guessed that the other party had a lot of people. If there were fewer people, they wouldn't have dared to come. After all, the 10 people who escaped just now had seen the strength of Su Yun and the other two. If they didn't have absolute confidence, they wouldn't have done such a crazy thing. Most of the time, profit would drive people crazy, and they would do things that they couldn't do at all. A priceless treasure like the beast's head would definitely make mercenaries go crazy for it. Although they didn't know what a cultural relic was, they were no stranger to the nouveau riche style of the Huaxia people. If the beast's head was taken out to sell, even if it was a small sale, the nouveau riche in Huaxia would probably dare to throw out a few billion yuan. This was not a big deal at all. A few billion yuan was not a small amount of money for people like them. Even if this money had to be divided equally among all of them, they would still fight for it. People would often feel an inexplicable sense of courage and encouragement when there were many people around. That kind of confidence was blind. They would feel that even if someone were to die, even if something were to happen, it would not be them who would be in trouble. This was a mistake that people would make when there were many people. Blindness. After Su Yun and the other two were fully armed, they immediately took the beast's head to the depths of the collapsed forest. The deeper they went, the more trees were crooked because of the collapse. The more crooked the place was, the easier it was to block a bullet for them. What Su Yun needed was a place where they could easily find cover. This way, their safety would be guaranteed to be the greatest guarantee. After all, it was completely dark now. They didn't know how many people there were, how much firepower they had, and how crazy they were. The most important thing was that, in a situation where bullets didn't have eyes, they didn't have good eyesight in the dark. It was too easy for things to go wrong. Moreover, these mercenaries were indeed too crazy. When their army of close to 100 people and more than 30 cars arrived, someone immediately picked up the M60E3 heavy machine gun and started to shoot wildly into the sky above the forest. Anyway, it was impossible to carry this kind of large, heavy firepower weapon with them. So many bullets were enough to kill the Pathfinder. As soon as the gunshots rang out, Su Yun and the other two moved even faster. These bastards really came prepared. They were completely sure that they hadn't left yet. Immediately after, someone used another M60E3 and started to shoot at the dark forest in parallel. This move was even more shameless. As the saying in Huaxia, it was called, "Shoot with a rod if you have a date but don't have one." If they could get lucky, it would be good luck. If they really didn't get lucky, it wouldn't do them any harm. This was the thought in the mind of the guy who was shooting wildly. It didn't matter if there were people inside, he would shoot wildly. The more concentrated the bullets, the more likely it was to kill one person. Chapter 3270. Su Yun could already hear the bullets whizzing past his ears. He cursed in his heart. This is really King dangerous. Aren't these bastards a little too cruel? Following that, two more people joined in the shooting. One could only imagine the intensity of the bullets that were madly coming at them. All of a sudden, the Sting Ant let out a startled cry and staggered a step forward. Unfortunately, he was shot in the back of his thigh. Although the bullet only penetrated the stinging ant's muscles and didn't hurt his bones, it was enough to make him fall to the ground. "Get down! Find cover! We can't go any further," Su Yun immediately ordered. These crazy people didn't plan to let them live, so they had to be more careful. Su Yun still had the mentality of taking risks just now, but now he didn't want to take any risks. The opponents were too strong, and they had enough people and bullets. It was obviously very dangerous for them to take risks. Su Yun asked them to lie down to reduce the possibility of being hit by bullets. The stinging ant was shot in his thigh, which meant that the opponent's shooting was relatively low, but because of the recoil, the bullets would always drift up a little. Now, there were countless branches in the air that were shot down, which meant that it was impossible to hide above. The density of the bullets was even more terrifying than below. After all, the tree trunk below was thicker and could block more bullets. Therefore, Su Yun quickly made the decision to lie down. Even if he wanted to leave, he had to wait for the other party's madness to end. He couldn't take the lives of the three of them as a joke. After all, they were now isolated and helpless. Whether or not he could bring the beast head back safely depended on his last gamble. Su Yun had to take the safest way and was determined not to take any risks. The greater the pressure on his shoulders, the heavier the burden, the more Su Yun didn't dare to act rashly. Everyone was like this, and Su Yun was no exception. This had nothing to do with being afraid of death. Su Yun wasn't afraid that something would happen to them. He was afraid that if something happened to them, there would be no hope for the beast head to return home. "These bastards are too cruel." Lin Gu was speechless. "Stinging ant, didn't you say that no one would come here normally? Can't you guess where these guys came from?" After the sting ant laid down, it tore off a piece of cloth from its sleeve and used it to cover its wound. "Do I even need to tell you?" Lin Gu didn't use his brain at all. He was stunned by the sudden bullet just now, and it took a while for him to gradually recover. Those people weren't running for their lives at all. They were going to call for reinforcements. Su Yun said, "However, from the looks of it, they can't be considered reinforcements. They know very well that the 4 dogs won't survive. They're here to get a share of the pie. They're here for the benefits. These bastards, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have let them go." Lin Gu said, "I didn't expect them to return kindness with enmity when we gave them a way out. They don't care about our kindness at all." The sting ant said, "They know very well why we didn't kill them. It's not that we don't want to kill them, but we're worried that it won't benefit us if we kill them. We already got the beast head, so there's no need for us to risk our lives with them. That's why they won't accept this favor at all." Lin Gu spat out a mouthful of saliva. "Even so, they're still ungrateful bastards who don't know what's good for them. They saw that we would be wary of them even if there were only a dozen of them. That's why they gathered so many people. It's obvious that they want to force us into a corner," the thorn ant said as he glanced at Su Yun. Su Yun's decision to let them go was tacitly approved, so Su Yun had to bear the responsibility. This kind of thing usually made people feel regretful, but Su Yun was already used to it. After all, it wasn't the first time he encountered something like this. This wasn't the time he regretted the most. The one time Su Yun regretted the most was about 6 years ago. After a mission, the bureau chief gave him 3 days of leave so that he could have a good rest. Su Yun originally planned to go out for a day trip and eat some food that couldn't be eaten in the army. At that time, Su Yun was very interested in the snacks on the street. Things like fried belly stinky tofu were definitely not available in the Dragon Brigade. Therefore, every time Su Yun got a day off, he would go to the famous snack street in Yanjing to eat all kinds of junk food. Although Wan Guangxiao and Wang Yi knew about this, they didn't force Su Yun to eat. They only told him to eat less of those things. Eating more wouldn't do him any good. Su Yun only chuckled and told them that he would only eat a little. This was called sharing joy with the people and experiencing the lives of the common people. Although Wan Guangxiao could tell that Su Yun was mocking the Dragon Brigade for eating specially provided food, he didn't criticize Su Yun. Regarding this special food, it wasn't the special treatment that they wanted. It was just that the current Food and Drug Safety and Quality Supervision Department was too incompetent. How many of the things that Huaxia people ate were not up to standard? It wasn't an exaggeration to say that even according to Huaxia's standards, at least 50% or more of the things made by manufacturers were not up to standard and inedible. According to the standards of other countries that paid more attention to human health, it was estimated that more than 90% of the things were inedible. Not to mention the food that people could eat every day, just the milk powder and seedlings used for children had problems on more than one or two occasions. Whether it was because the profiteers were too greedy or because the regulators were too greedy, it wasn't clear. Anyway, the special agents of the special department couldn't be removed. However, the special agents themselves were limited and couldn't be supplied the same as the people. Therefore, the people had to keep their eyes open and check the official website of the Food and Drug Safety and Quality Supervision Department. As long as the products were exposed by them once, they shouldn't buy them again. Just like Sonlu, if there was such a thing, they should completely shut it down. That old woman surnamed Tian was only sentenced to 18 years in prison. It was 2F** King Light. She must have spent a lot of money to use her connections. It wasn't known if the judge was fair or not, but it was definitely a light punishment. If 100 people from all over the country were to ask Sonlu's old woman Tian what her sentence should be, 99% of them would say the death penalty. The remaining one would probably be her relatives. Why was it that her death penalty wasn't unjust? How many children in the country had kidney stones because of her melamine? How many children had she ruined? It also caused many children to become brain damaged. The generation that grew up drinking Sonlu, there was no need to talk about how many brain-damaged children there were. The term brain-damaged was invented because of this generation. Brain-damaged tablets were also created at the same time. Some brain-damaged fans were probably brain-damaged because of old woman Tian's milk powder, causing the internet to be in a mess. Of course, when Su Yun went out to eat, he didn't drink Sonlu's milk powder. Of course, he had also urged everyone not to focus on Sonlu and forget about other companies. But Sonlu was too big of a scapegoat. That was why it stopped the Quality Supervision Department from reporting the melamine content of the milk powder to other companies. Other than Hebei Sonlu, Shaanxi Ashili, Inner Mongolia Ili, Mengniu Group, Qingdao Shengyuan, Shanghai Panda, Shaanxi Guqing, Jiangxi Guangming, Baoji Huimin, Duojiajuo Dairy, Hunan Nanshan, and other 22 companies' 69 batches of products were all unqualified. Thinking about the advertising slogans of these manufacturers and then thinking about the shameless businessmen behind them, it was really disgusting. But what was more disgusting was that as long as some companies had money and power to suppress this matter, they could use large-scale advertisements to clear their names. Weren't the two big brands that could be seen in supermarkets every day washed very clean? It could even be said that any poor child who did not live in a poor mountainous area that did not even have a mud road would have drunk the products of those two big brands. Furthermore, they were sold at such a high price. The profits were terrifyingly high. Su Yun was such a patriotic person, and he would not look down on local products. But at that time, he really wanted to urge everyone to get rid of the scams of local dairy businessmen. Don't even drink a mouthful. Only then can they seriously check if their conscience is black. Of course, 6 years ago, Su Yun went to the food street to eat some snacks made from gutter oil. He didn't drink Sonlu's milk. That day, he met a girl who was helping her family with their business at the food stall. She looked about 16 years old, and the girl gave him a note. On the note, there was a sentence that made Su Yun's hair stand. Chapter 3271. The note said, "Save me, I am imprisoned, please help me." Su Yun was naturally nervous when he saw the note. If what was written on the note was true, then the little girl was facing something worse than a beast. At this time, Su Yun didn't have time to distinguish whether it was true or false. He directly exposed the matter. At that time, he wanted to save the little girl, but the man didn't want to. Su Yun wanted to teach him a lesson, but he didn't have any evidence. In the end, he could only call the police. After the police arrived, they took Su Yun and the man to the police station. After some interrogation, Su-Yun became more and more convinced of the little girl's words, especially after seeing some scars on the little girl's body. Although everyone knew that the little girl must have been imprisoned and bullied by this bastard, and then forced the little girl to come out and help him do business. However, the law was particular about evidence. In the end, no one could find any evidence that this person hurt the little girl. Therefore, in addition to sending the little girl to the shelter, the bastard was let go after criticizing and educating him. Although Su-Yun was helpless, he couldn't rely on his intuition to do anything without any evidence. Every time he thought of that bastard's smug expression, Su-Yun would feel an inexplicable anger in his heart. The bastard didn't get any punishment. Su-Yun thought that this matter would be over. But what he didn't expect was that all this was just the beginning of the little girl's nightmare. Not only did this bastard not turn over a new leaf, but he also thought that as long as he didn't leave any evidence, even the law couldn't do anything to him. Because of this thought, on a dark and windy night, this guy did something that angered both man and God. He actually cruelly raped the little girl. Every time he thought of this, Su-Yun would tremble all over. He still didn't know whether what he did was right or wrong. If he was given a chance to choose again, he would definitely kill that bastard with his own hands. Although the villains were eventually brought to justice, so what? The little girl who was the victim could no longer be saved. Some of the crimes that should have happened had already happened. It was useless to do anything now. Su-Yun regretted not making a move at that time. If he had killed that bastard directly, wouldn't everything that happened later be gone? Wouldn't that mean that the poor little girl wouldn't be hurt anymore? Perhaps it was that thought that could change a person's life. Su-Yun always felt guilty. He felt that he had let down that little girl. Even today, when he thought of this matter, he still regretted that he didn't impulsively kill that bastard back then. Although they had always tried to control their vengeful mentality, and being unscrupulous was a mistake for them, what could they do in the face of these lawless bastards? Most of the time, there were many things that had to be treated differently. Not all hatred and loyalty were bad things. Impulse was indeed the devil, but in some matters, reason could also become the devil. Therefore, from that day onwards, Su-Yun learned when to be rational and when to be impulsive. Sometimes, there would always be people who felt that Su-Yun was too impulsive and didn't consider everything. In fact, it was the opposite. Because Su-Yun considered more and more thoroughly, sometimes he chose to be impulsive. Not all impulsiveness was the devil. Some impulsiveness was the only way to solve problems. Just like now, Su-Yun didn't care about them being impulsive and hateful. Only the greatest degree of hatred could ignite their fighting spirit and give them enough courage to face countless mercenaries. Lin Ge had already raised his gun. With his sharp eyes, he immediately made a judgment. The target has appeared about 250 meters away. They have entered the shooting range. Be ready to fire at any time, Su-Yun ordered. They were few in number, so they couldn't wait until the enemy was very close to carry out a large-scale annihilation. If the enemy had more people, they would lose their advantage when the distance was too close. At this distance, not only could a cold shot enrage the enemy, but it could also confuse the enemy. Lin Ge didn't hold back and fired 3 shots. With the sound of bullets piercing through the night sky, one of the enemy's vanguard troops was directly killed by Lin Ge. The sound of bullets and the sound of the enemy falling shocked them. In a panic, the heavy machine gunner once again held his gun and fired wildly. After a burst of crazy gunfire, the heavy machine gunner panted heavily and looked around vigilantly. Close to 100 mercenaries all quieted down in an instant. They suddenly realized the strength of the enemy. Perhaps the enemy couldn't be compared to them in terms of numbers, but in terms of actual combat experience and combat quality, they were far superior to them. In the face of a carpet barrage of bullets, they were able to dodge without making a sound. They were even able to shoot and kill one of them the moment they let their guard down. This wasn't as simple as killing one person. This was a type of deterrence to invaders. This type of deterrence would often severely damage the morale of the enemy, and the importance of morale in a battle was self-evident. Close to 100 mercenaries who were full of morale just now lost half of their morale the moment they lost one person. Therefore, sometimes, under certain circumstances, killing one person was more important than killing 10 people. Lin Ji's cold shot caused the enemy to directly slow down the enemy's encirclement, which gave Su Yun and the others a lot of time to prepare. This was especially true for the sting ant whose leg was injured. What it needed the most right now was to stall for time. The sting ant, whose movements were already slowed down due to its injury, had a lot of time to catch its breath. It was also able to easily find a suitable cover for itself and prepare for battle. "How is it? Can you still hold on?" Su Yun smiled and said, "If you really can't hold on, just say it." The sting ant nodded and said, "If I can't even hold on with such a small injury, then I don't need to come out anymore. I'm a mercenary, and it's not the first time I've been hit by bullets. Even if I'm injured, it's more than enough to deal with them." "Okay, as long as you're fine." Su Yun nodded and said, "You'll deal with the pair on the left later." "Okay." The sting ant's cover was quite advantageous for the left side. Without Su Yun saying anything, Lin Gu directly accepted the order and said, "Don't worry, brother. I'll take care of the mid-laner. I'm Gale Sword Hero Yasuo." Su Yun broke out in cold sweat. This kid was really professional. He was already in such a dangerous situation in the Golden Triangle, but he could still bring himself into the game. This kid wanted to become the legendary mid-laner overlord. Thinking about it now, it could be seen from the weapon he chose. A gun with a fast firing rate had a short cooldown. Then, from the sudden burst of skills, it could be seen from the weapon he chose. With a huge rock as cover, it was simply a wind wall that could withstand tons of damage. With Lin Gu around, the middle lane could be completely at ease. Su Yun was able to focus all his attention on the right side of the road. The right side of the road wasn't easy for the enemy mercenaries to traverse. It was muddy and rugged. Therefore, the people who surrounded them on this road were definitely the experts of the enemy mercenaries. Although this road seemed to be the safest, it was actually the most dangerous one. It wouldn't be easy for Su Yun to keep an eye on this road. Su Yun was very clear about the principle of caution. Therefore, his eyes never left the few points on the right side of the road. After one of the mercenaries died, they all hid. Cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. For them, this was definitely a challenge, an unprecedented challenge. "Everyone, keep your spirits up. Your lives are yours. Find a way to protect them. Only those who stay alive will have the chance to get a share of the money. I don't need anyone to emphasize this point, right?" The mercenary team never lacked chicken soup masters, who could cheer and encourage. Most of the time, it was often a sentence that could incite people's combat power. Chapter 3272. Every time they thought about splitting the money, the mercenary group's passion would be ignited. There was only one thought in everyone's mind: money. Money could make people go crazy, it could make people go crazy. Those who became mercenaries only had one goal, and that was money. If anyone cares about their lives, you can leave now. But after you leave, don't ever come back. The guy who suddenly became the leader of the mercenary group said righteously, "Only comrades who care about each other can share the fruits of victory together." All the mercenaries did not hesitate to raise the weapons in their hands. Their faces were filled with determination. For the sake of the beast head, for everyone's benefit, they only had one goal: to kill the enemy. Team 1 and 2, follow me to the right. Team 3, 4, 5, 6, take the middle. The rest of you, take the left. The clear division of labor allowed the mercenary group of nearly 100 people to attack Su Yun's group in an orderly manner. The number of people attacking from the middle was the most. Lin Gu looked at the equipment in his hands and then looked at the few magazines he had. If each shot could kill a person, these bullets would be more than enough to do so. However, it was late at night and it was dark. The opponents were not the kind of targets who would stand there and let themselves be shot. They were a group of mercenaries who knew how to find cover. Even the best sharpshooter could not guarantee that every bullet would kill an enemy. This was not an anti-Japanese war film, where a sharpshooter could kill 2 or 3 people with a single bullet from a captured gun, and it was called a skewer of candied haws. In reality, even if someone could do Tonghulu skewers, he or she would at least be a very stable sniper. Only under special circumstances and with a sniper rifle with a high penetrative power could one do something like Tonghulu skewers. Most people would not be able to do something like this. Lin Guo was facing a lot of people. This was a difficult task. On the other hand, although Su Yun was facing fewer people, the two teams were the elites of the mercenary group. It could be said that, in the entire mercenary group of nearly 100 people, these two teams were the most threatening. The Sting Ant wasn't having an easy time either. Although his injuries weren't serious, he was injured in a position that was more troublesome for warriors. This would cause him to pull on his wounds when he was doing many things. This would definitely distract the Sting Ants. Although the number of Sting Ants was small, there were still more than 20 experienced mercenaries. The 3 of them had no more than 300 bullets in their guns and magazines. Facing nearly 100 enemies, they had to be very careful if they wanted to kill one enemy with 3 bullets in this dark and windy night. Nearly 100 mercenaries began to move out, and a black shadow flickered in the distance. Lin Gu didn't care how many bullets he had. He aimed and fired. All of them were burst shots. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. With these 3 nods, he directly knocked down 4 people in the middle of the opposing team. Lin Ji's face revealed a proud smile. The more he started, the easier it was to hit. The number of people on the opposing team was very high. It was the hardest to spread out at the beginning. Before they spread out, the targets would be more concentrated, and Lin Ji's chances of hitting his targets would be higher. It could be said that Lin Ji's targets were 3 of them, but he killed 4 of them. One of them was killed by 2 bullets. Although Lin Gu could be considered as killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Lin Gu didn't feel complacent because of this. Instead, he calmed down and prepared to deal with the next opponent. This was because although he killed 4 people with these few shots, the overlapping shadows made it difficult for him to distinguish how many people there were. As a result, Lin Gu became more vigilant and nervous. On the other hand, the people on the left side were advancing quite quickly. After the Sting Ant was ready to shoot, it started to shoot crazily. The people on the left side didn't expect such a crazy output from their side. Naturally, they were caught off guard. 2 of them were killed on the spot. One of them was shot through the knee and couldn't walk. The other 3 suffered gunshot wounds of varying degrees. It could be said that none of the people in the front were spared. All of them were hit. The remaining people immediately decided to slow down. The group of people crouched down and didn't move forward. Their faces were very ugly. Everyone knew that walking at the front was the easiest way to get shot. Something like a sniper rifle wasn't something that could be defended against by strength alone. Instead, it was something that could be dodged by luck alone. This kind of situation where walking in the front was equivalent to courting death, and walking in the back was a possibility of getting a share of the money. When it was so clearly displayed in front of everyone, who would be foolish enough to be the bird that stood out and possibly get shot? The Sting Ant quickly reloaded. It could be said that it had withstood the bullet and managed to control the speed of the other party. What he needed to do was to defend his position before Su Yun or Lin Gu finished off all of their opponents. He couldn't allow his opponents to break through from his position first. If they broke through from his position, he would be in an awkward position. Su Yun calmly observed the right side that he was in charge of. The 2 teams on the right side were obviously different from the other teams. These 20 people were very well planned. Although they took the most difficult path on the right side, they still attacked from 2 directions. If the other party broke through, it would be difficult to control them. How could Su Yun let them break through so easily? Without saying anything, he picked up an AWP sniper rifle next to him. The sniper rifle was equipped with ATN's infrared night vision sight. It allowed Su Yun to see as if he was in the middle of the night. Although he could not see the scenery on the collapsed tree trunk clearly, he could see every single person clearly. In the blink of an eye, 5 people had climbed up the tree. Su Yun could not let them occupy the high ground so unscrupulously. The strategic significance and value of the high ground were paramount. If it was a real war, any small bunker on the high ground would be a headache for the attackers. Su Yun had already aimed at one of the 5 people. He did not have the time to study the candied haws at the moment. However, he knew the importance of this shot. Whether or not he could intimidate the other party and occupy the high ground depended on his marksmanship. Bang dash! With a loud bang, a body fell from the sky not far away. In an instant, the remaining few people who still wanted to climb up the tree felt their legs go weak. Soon, the second gunshot rang out. This was the second time Su Yun pulled the trigger. The sniper rifle shot down the second person with great accuracy. Su Yun's skill with a sniper rifle was not to be trifled with. Such rapid and agile shooting, as well as being able to accurately take out an opponent that was more than 20 meters above the ground from 200 meters away, was obviously a very serious shock to the enemy. However, Su Yun's performance was not over yet. Su Yun's next 3 shots hit 2 more targets. Only one of the 5 people on the tree was lucky enough to escape. The other top mercenaries all paid a heavy price because they underestimated the enemy. It was not wrong to say that they underestimated the enemy. In this case, it was obviously a kind of exposure to be in the air. Unless they were very confident in their own ability and had a certain degree of contempt for the enemy, they would not choose to go up. Su Yun and the other 2 did not dare to choose to go up to ambush because they knew that there were advantages and disadvantages to being in the air. There was no need to say what the advantages were, but the disadvantages were already seen. Once the enemy discovered their target, they would die very thoroughly. It was not difficult for a skilled sniper to fire a few shots in a short period of time. If one's reaction was slightly slower, they would die immediately. The elite mercenaries had already lost 4 people to Su Yun's sniping. For a moment, no one dared to take this shortcut. In the blink of an eye, the enemy's team of close to 100 people had lost 10 people. This was definitely a very big setback for them. The mercenaries, whose morale had been greatly weakened, actually all chose to stop and remain silent at this moment. The surroundings were deathly silent. No one spoke, and no one tried to step into the lightning pool. Everyone was hiding behind the bunker beside them, breathing heavily, their faces pale. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.